Good evening and welcome to the November 18th meeting of the Kingston Select Board. Please rise and join me in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have several appointments. Our first one that was scheduled for 5:30 has been postponed. I can't give you another date at this time, but I'm going to stick to the times listed on our agenda. 6 o'clock for the Lake Association, 6:30 for the community power presentation, only because I know there are individuals that are planning to attend those two discussions, if you will, and want to be here when that happens. So I'll honor those requests. We'll take care of some other board business prior to that. Then at 6 o'clock, we'll go right with the Lake Association and so forth. Okay, is that okay with everyone? Okay, great. Well, but let's go with committee liaison reports. Laurie, I'll start with you. Oh, wait a minute. Before we do that, I'm sorry. My apologies for not introducing the board. We have some guests in the audience who don't know who we are. To my far left is Laurie Schwett, board member. To my immediate left is Glenn Koppelman, vice chair and board member. To my far right is Susan Eyre, our administrative assistant. Peter Bakey, board member. Chuck Hart, board member, and I'm Ellie Alessio, your chair. So welcome, and we'll start with board liaison reports, and Laurie.
Not really a liaison, but website. A few of us met with the company rep last week and had some good productive conversations, and 5 or 6 of us are meeting on Friday to divvy up tasks so we can get this to bed, updated and launched, because once we launch the new website, the old site is no longer accessible. So we need to make sure that everybody who has an interest in the website and has access to update now can do that moving forward, and that we have all of the pieces and parts that we want.
Okay, have we not had that done yet because they didn't know what we wanted?
No, they have provided us the test site, but we just had Caitlin and Susan and myself just not have had dedicated time to sit and go through it, because they copied over everything that we had existing.
Yeah.
Good, bad, and the ugly. So we need to go through that and delete all of the old stuff, and there's some different functionality that we just need to learn.
Okay.
So we hope to have on Friday, just really divvy up and say, okay, you guys, you're doing this pages, we're doing these pages, and so we can get it launched.
Okay, so we can easily find things again.
So we can easily find things again.
Or for the first time. Glenn?
So question on that, I know we asked this question a while back, and I'm not sure we had an answer to it. The list that we maintain currently for people to get notices from the town, there was some question about whether or not that would carry over to the new website or whether people would have to sign up all over again. Do we have any sense for that?
She did say it will carry over, so.
I thought you had said that once before when we
At
asked.
this meeting too, we
Okay, she
asked
did,
again,
all right.
so.
Okay.
Do you know how many people we have signed up for notifications of
Do
minutes?
not.
It's
There's
a lot.
Quite a few.
It's a lot, okay. That's
Yeah.
good. That's good.
And the solid waste and recycling folks have been really successful in getting folks email addresses for that too. So
Okay.
the list is growing. So yes, that's
Excellent.
going to import over.
Okay, great.
So that'll be Friday, and so we should make some headway. We really kind of want to get that wrapped up. We had a solid waste and recycling meeting on the 14th last week. Chuck Margosian gave us some updates on the whole 2028 contracts moving forward. He reached back out to the points of contact of the two companies and adjusted his timeline, realizing that we do only need 18 months for prior to the start of the contract for the new one to be signed. So that puts us at July of 2026. That's when it has to be signed, that's 18 months prior to the start. So really kind of getting stuff out on the street, you know, February, March timeframe of 2026. So we still have a little bit of time.
Okay. And once again, Madam Schwett, I'm going to disagree. I think we need it sooner rather than later, because I think we need time to maybe have a contractor's bid, but we'll talk about
yeah,
that.
and that's all worked into that. That's all worked into that timeframe.
Okay, but I still think sooner rather than later, and I guess I feel sensitive to that because when I first came on the board almost 5 years ago, I walked in on the last minute stuff from Waste Management, and it was an awful situation. And if I remember correctly, our colleague Kevin St. James tried to get other vendors to come in and bid. It was too late. We couldn't get anything done, and the only option we had was Waste Management. And I don't want to run up against that.
No.
So I will be pushing for earlier deadline. I'm just letting you know.
So understood, but we're
Okay.
listening to what the vendors are telling us, and they're saying they won't bid prior to 18 months.
Well, and not only that, but even if they did, they wouldn't be giving us really valid information because it's too far in advance for pricing and so forth.
There would be some there would have to be some variability. Yeah, because based on the price of index oil and all that.
And that was also, keep in mind that there was also supply and demand from COVID, and they don't have that long lead time anymore, and that was part of the reason before. So that was part of the discussion at the meeting.
And there will be a follow-up discussion on December 2nd for the board to look at whether or not we support recycling or not.
Right, for curbside recycling, right.
curbside
December
recycling.
2nd is really the public forum on determining if we move forward with curbside recycling when this current contract ends, which is December of 2027. So we still have more than 3 years of this current contract, but we need to figure out what the next one looks like now, so we can make, you know, move forward in the right direction. And then we also talked about the budget, what's needed for the solid waste and recycling budget for next year. So that's part of the executive budget. So, because we want an increase in that because of mailings and things like that. So I have all of the data for that we can,
So
when we're
that's-
talking budget, we can talk then about that.
All right.
I think that's it, because everything else is different agenda items.
Okay, any questions for Laurie? No. Glenn Copeland, please.
Nothing to report, Madam Chair.
Oh, isn't that nice?
Well, I don't know if that's nice, but I don't.
Some weeks are like that. You just never know. I don't really have much myself to report. Planning board is tomorrow night, so I don't have any updates from there. We did appoint a new rec director who has accepted the position. That's Abby Zarkowski. So she'll be joining our staff. And we already talked about making sure we had audio. When we need to find someone that'll help back up Adam. And I've asked Susan to get together with Paula, our HR person, to develop a public notice for solicitation of a part-time person. And we can talk about that, any details that you might have questions on, Paula. Next, Chuck, any updates? Budget committee, whatever?
Nothing for conservation. Budget committee meets Wednesday night, and I think the police department is due in. The only thing under fire is I'm going to probably put the chief on the spot a little bit. But I just have been reading a little bit on the Facebook about all the mutual aid with the fires and forest fires or whatever it is. Can you just update on where they're going and what you've been, just as a curiosity, because you're all over the place.
You're a busy man.
Good evening. So yes, currently the state of New Hampshire is under a red flag warning, which means no outside burning in the state of New Hampshire. So a few weekends ago, I was on the fence whether to, because it can be community by community, to shut down outside burning. That was the holiday weekend. So we're in zone 6, I believe. So things are taken into consideration from the Forest and Lands Bureau regarding obviously rainfall amounts, humidity, dryness, whole equation of things. But I have shut down burning in the town of Kingston. We responded to what started off as a 40 by 40 grass fire last night, which destroyed somebody's shed. We ended up using 4 tankers and 2 forestries and an engine from other towns. So I would strongly recommend obviously be cautious how you dispose of smoking materials, no outside burning, and fireworks are an issue as well.
But now you've been going, you were down in Andover with a pumper truck? Good.
Yep, so what happens with that is we're part of a mutual aid group throughout the Northeast, really, and their strike teams. So one day we sent a tanker down to Boxford for their multi-week fire, and then last Wednesday, I believe, we sent a forestry unit with a couple of guys up to Mason, New Hampshire.
And so that's just curiosity. So if they go to Mason with the truck, those 2 guys, do they actually end up standing by, or do they actually get
Nope,
into the fray?
they were crawling around the woods and putting out fire.
All right. Thank you.
So just, for a multi-acre fire, especially the one in Boxford and Andover that was burning for weeks, just takes a lot of time and manpower to put something like that out. And with minimal resources around that town or those towns that the fire is in, then instead of depleting all the resources and ambulance staffing and fire engine staffing within the 5 bordering towns or whatever, they end up going pretty far out to try to call in extra resources. For both the Boxford fire and the Mason fire, I will not, if possible, send my duty crew to keep an ambulance and a fire truck staffed here, because that's my primary responsibility as the fire chief in Kingston. So those were all extra personnel that I called in to go to those places.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for the chief? Okay, thanks, chief. Anything else, Chuck?
Nope.
Okay. Peter?
Nothing to report this time.
Good deal. Okay, thank you. We still got a little time here, so let's go to unfinished business. First one was a cemetery sexton appointment. Do we need an updated discussion on that?
Most of that will probably be in non-public, but we did meet
Okay,
on Friday to talk about kind of division of duties because the sexton responsibilities are so intermeshed with DPW.
Yeah.
And how to continue in that model, but separate them as much as we can, right? So we did talk about that and how to accurately capture all of the time spent, not just for sexton, but for the folks who are cutting the grass, because that's all part of it, right?
okay.
So we talked about that, and then we talked, so DPW director is on board with the proposed sexton appointment, as is the trustees of the trust fund, but it's really talking more in non-public about any compensation and what that looks
Okay,
like.
sure thing.
Yep.
Okay. Update on the front stairs project, Susan.
The only update I had was that there was a
sorry.
meeting that they,
Tom will be here, but it wasn't later till the.
Okay, we can hold
Yeah,
off on
so when
that.
he comes in, he'll be
yeah, he
able to
wasn't
update us.
expecting it to be so quick, so.
Okay, he wants to do it, that's no problem. How about the amended assessing contract, which is in our orange folder for our signatures?
Those are the extra hours that you approved at the last meeting. I had her put it in an amendment to the current contract for the extra expense, and you need to sign that, but it's the same numbers that you looked at last week.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that, is it just your signature, Ellie?
No,
or-
it's all of us.
It's all of us. I'll
Yeah.
make a motion that we sign this, this additional contract for assessing work.
And is there a second? And further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it unanimously. Thank you. Okay, the ARPA updates, if there are any. Paula, would you come forward? Are there any updates on ARPA, or last week's report holds firm right now until we spend more money?
we have the water text thing in our thing, would be part
The
of it.
memo you have about.
That would be it, the water tech
Yeah.
is the only new thing that's come in, but I'm assuming Paul has seen that already, right?
Yes, I
Yeah,
sent it to her.
she was emailed, she was
Yeah, she was-
CC'd on the email today.
Okay,
So, yeah, with the new estimates for water techs.
Yep.
We have about 12,651 that's not reserved at all.
okay. So that's good. So we're whittling down.
So I talked to Tom about the electrical, and it's 9,000 on there. He talked to Tom,
Saratoga.
yes, and they think it's gonna be about 12. So I would just earmark that for 12 instead of 9.
Electric for.
The planes.
For the planes,
Yeah.
yeah. To
Yeah.
update the panel on the planes
Yep.
by the
Yeah.
police
I
station,
actually forgot.
police fire, excuse me, by the fire station.
And Tom Rowan's hoping to get like a solid estimate.
Okay,
So
good.
we can have that, but he said it's probably gonna be about 12 instead of,
I'm sure we'll be able to make that work.
yeah.
And then we've been requested by Tammy and this would benefit everyone in the town hall, to get the big shredder that we had. It's in the kitchen behind the door.
Yeah.
It does not work, and it's like a heavy-duty one. So she asked if I could present something so that we could get a new shredder. And that is about to have a heavy-duty one like that and to have it at the right security level, meaning it cuts the paper in a certain way. There's certain rules when we have to shred stuff, how it has to be cut. It would be a 2,800. And then she doesn't have one in her office at all, and that's 360. So we wanted to take a small, the big one is 44 gallons. One for her office is, that part got cut off, hold on. It's 8 gallons, it's a small one, but she has nothing in her office right now.
Okay,
So we wanted to add that if we could.
okay. If we have the money, yeah, let's do it. Yep.
It would be about like 3,000, 3,100 altogether.
I'd entertain a motion to that effect, that if funds are available, that we approve expenditure of $360 for a shredder machine within the town clerk tax collector's office and $2,800 for a more industrial-sized shredder in the kitchen. And a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
And are the water techs, is that gonna be spoken about
Well,
today?
I'd like to take that up, but let's finish this one.
Yeah, let's
Yes,
finish, hold on, Paula.
So don't bring it up now?
No, it is, we can do it now.
We want
yeah.
to finish the motion and adding the
Okay.
two things for the, downstairs. Further discussion on those two shredders? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it unanimously, thank you. Okay, now, water tech.
Right, so, yeah, I mean, he provided all the documentation, you were CC'd on that email today.
Yeah.
So for the town hall to install a system in a year of maintenance is, $6,200. For the police station in a year of maintenance is $7,800.
Yeah.
These are rough. DPW is the same as the police station, and then for the fire station, it's really maintenance of the pre-treatment system. Since the POET system, the water's fine for PFAS, it's just getting it so it's getting, softer and getting the smell and the taste out of it. So that's a total of $22,865.
And we have, what's in our folders is a summary of the full packet that came from WaterTex, which has the full estimate with all of the detail for,
And the breakdown.
and the breakdown for each of the sites,
Okay,
so.
so I would need a motion for the amount of $22,865.
Can I say something
Sure,
first?
of course.
So just going through it's $885, sorry. But going through these, would this, would this get rid of our bottled water that we're getting?
Yes.
Because if that's the case, then I feel like this is costing a lot more money. The reason being is now we're gonna pay $1,000 for the town hall, the fire department, but not 1,000 for the fire, but close to it. For the PD and the DPW, that's $4,000 a year. We only pay $2,500 for water.
In the long run, I think installing a water treatment system is the best bet instead of continuing to get bottled water. And so what's the difference though? $1,400 a year?
Additional every year.
I understand that, so it's a $1,400 difference.
Well, as long as our employees all use the water that's as a result of the POET system, that makes sense, but if there's pushback,
Another question would be the longevity of those systems, because you're putting out that's just the budget on to maintain them, but those systems don't last forever. Media has to be replaced. There's a lot more to it than the $1,000 a year. In addition to that $1,000 a year, that's when they're first put in. So down the road, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, you might have to replace all those systems. They don't last forever.
What systems?
The water systems that you're putting into these buildings.
These water tech. yeah.
Correct. They're gonna have to be replaced. So down the road, you're gonna replace those systems again. So that's another thought you gotta look at.
Well, that's everybody's houses too.
That's right.
right, that's true too, no question.
So Graham, what,
Come on up.
well, the question is, he had brought up before about of having obviously clear water now, or at least perceived to be clear water, but still wants the bottled water or the machine water. Is that still going to hold true for you?
So I think it's a personal preference of employees, right? You have a board member here that stated at a previous meeting that they have 100% drinkable tap water at their residence, but that they drink bottled water as a personal preference. So I think you're gonna get a lot of pushback when you try to take, I know when the past DPW director tried to take the water bubblers out of places, there was a lot of pushback. So again, you're the 4 fathers and mothers, 5 mothers and fathers of the community, so we're gonna do whatever you guys tell us to do.
I was just trying to get at, we're trying to save money by doing this, but we're actually gonna be almost doubling the annual fee, just the maintenance.
I guess if you're looking for my honest opinion, I think the water treatment is necessary, because if somebody, again, my employees live at the station for 24 hours, so they shower there, they shave there, they brush their teeth there. And if you go way back, when Bill Seaman was still chief, I was the one as a captain that came forward to promote putting a filter, PFOA filter in the old station. So I guess for the additional $3,000 a year, probably less, I would do both, but that's just me. I'm not a select board member, I'm a department head.
Well, my position is that we're going to do one or the other. I don't think that we really should do both. And my preference is to install the systems. I realize that there will be some additional cost down the line for maintenance and for ultimately for, replacing components as needed. But these are public buildings, and I think that it's our responsibility as a town to have the water potable and not to have to rely on brought-in bottled water, so.
Thank you, Glenn. Other comments? Are you ready to vote on this then? I'll entertain a motion to expend $22,800. What did I do?
Did you correct the number? You said 885?
885. It says 865 in our paper, it's 885. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
In a second?
Second.
In discussion?
And to be clear, these are funds that are coming from the ARPA
Correct.
account. And, okay, thank you.
So just for clarification, so that $1,000 a year, because that'll only cover the first year, right? Right. So where does that come out of my budget next year and DPW and?
Well,
police?
that would be the question. I don't know where the bottled water's coming out of now, so
It comes out of government building.
then it would probably stay
Oh,
out
it'd
of
stay in
government.
government
Okay,
Yeah.
just for
I
budgeting
mean, it would
reasons,
be
I just wanted-
budgeted, whether it's single budgets or in one, you know.
Okay.
So, yes. So I would think it would be the same as the bottled water.
Right, in government buildings.
Yeah.
Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it unanimously. Okay, thank you.
With these, it comes, we'll have about $6,500 left in ARPA that we have to promise or
I would,
spend by the end of the year.
I would suggest maybe that you send an email out to some other departments to let them know there's a little money there if they've got something small.
Yeah, and we have a department head next.
Can those paper shredders come out of ARPA?
Yeah.
Yes,
So that's 3,100 right there.
No, that's already,
I counted that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's including that extra 3K for the electric, right,
Yeah.
Paula?
yes.
yes.
Okay.
So
Yep.
go ahead and update the ARPA balance, and then we'll know exactly, yeah, it's 31.
Yeah, I have it, it was just now, we just added more stuff to it,
Thank
so.
you. All righty, thank you, thanks, chief. This takes care of that, and we're 1 minute before 6. Okay, let's do that police grant fund, Paula. Paula, the police grant was one other item there that we'd like to take care of. Correct vote for acceptance of the police grant funds. Is that for you, Paula, or is that something from you, Susan?
Thing that Chrissy sent over, we didn't accept the entire grant amount, only the portion, and they didn't
Oh,
accept
okay,
that, so
great,
those, the
sorry.
numbers are in your. Redo the motion that you did last time, only instead of 4,327.50, it's 12,572.50, so.
12,572.50.
Correct, to accept the Department of Safety grant. And I
That's
have
the
all the wording for that in the amount of, if someone would make a motion in a second, then I can send
So
it.
moved.
Okay, in a second, to approve the 12,572.50 for the correct police grant funds. Okay, discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Unanimous vote. Okay, we're good to go on that. So let's move back to our sixth. Okay, let's go back to the 6 o'clock scheduled appointment with the Lake Association Watershed Management Plan presentation. And those of you here that are presenting, come forward. Please use a microphone. Make sure the little green button is on. You can put it right in front of you if you can hear clearly, and introduce yourselves for sure. How do I advance the slides? I don't know. Hold on 1 second.
So set those mics right in front of you and push the button till it turns green. There you go. And just leave them that way. Okay.
You can introduce yourselves in the meantime as he gets set up.
That sounds good. Well, I know you know Muriel, but I'll let her introduce herself. My name is Forrest Bell. I'm the owner of FB Environmental Associates. We are the consulting firm that was hired by the town to do the watershed study of Kingston Lake. So that's what I have a PowerPoint about. And Muriel?
I'm here to support Forrest, and I have a letter that I would like to submit to the board when Forrest is done. I'll read that, and I have copies for all of you.
Okay, that's great.
It's a request.
It's quite a report. Quite a report. Let us know when you're ready, Adam. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll just, while we're waiting for that, just a real quick background. I think it was maybe 4 summers ago that I presented at your annual meeting over at Camp Lincoln. And at that meeting, I just talked about water quality and, you know, what you need to do to protect the lake. And Muriel said, well, that's what we're doing, and we'd love to work with you, and we've been talking about a watershed plan for quite a while now. So here we are. It took a little while to get the grant and secure the funds. I'll just say from the business owner standpoint, it's been great to work with the town, and Susan, you made it very easy for us, and I just really appreciate that. It's not always easy, so we've done a few of these over time. So I just wanted to express some appreciation of that. And I guess while we're waiting for the slides, I'll wing it a bit and just tell you a little bit more about the bigger process. So Kingston Lake it's an impaired lake in the state of New Hampshire. And the main impairment is for dissolved oxygen. And usually the oxygen levels go down when you have nutrients flowing into the lake. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. When that happens, and this is all overseen by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, a lake or a community needs to put together a watershed plan, which is essentially a scientific study for the lake, in order to be eligible for future grants to pay to fix the lake. So that's essentially, what we're doing and where we are in that process is really, we're moving into implementation. So I'll go pretty quickly through the slides. There was a presentation at the end of June. I know Glenn was part of that.
Lori was too.
Oh, you were too? Oh, thank you. Okay, I was not there, but I have staff that are much smarter than me that put the report together. So I made sure I sat down with them today and got all the details. Are we getting close? Okay, does he? Should I check with him?
Sure.
Do we have the next folks' presentation, or are they going to bring in this?
Should I keep winging it? Yeah, he's just having a little trouble uploading the file, but I'm sure we'll get there. So basically, Electra has the watershed plan, I think, in front of her. So that's the document that was completed this summer. I think it was about an 18-month process to do that work. And as I mentioned, it's a study of the lake, and not just the lake, but the watershed that flows into the lake. The watershed, again, if I had my nice picture, I'd be able to show you. It's a pretty big watershed in relation to the size of Kingston Lake or Great Pond. And what a lot of people, we all live in watersheds, right? No matter where you are in the United States, you're in a watershed, which is basically, that means when it rains or when the snow melts, like up here in New Hampshire, that water's flowing into somewhere. Most of the water makes it out into the Atlantic Ocean, but yeah, the watershed receives water from Greenwood Pond and Long Pond. So, and again, it's almost like the Florida Everglades. Everything's always moving. It's making its way down. So when you have an eroded ditch that's 1.5 miles away, some of that soil that's eroding into the lake contains phosphorus, and that phosphorus is what can contribute to these cyanobacteria blooms, which is a potential human health hazard. So maybe I can, I have it on my laptop. Do you want me to?
I could do my letter.
Yeah,
if
why don't we
would
do
help.
that?
If that would help. Yes. Okay. The intent of this letter is to request that the Select Board establish a committee to oversee the watershed management plan created under the grant by FB environmentalists. This 100-page plan is daunting, and it will take a special group or committee to tackle its content and oversee its recommendations. Creating a special group whose only task is to oversee the plan and help it to become a reality. This is a multi-year project, and implementing its recommendations will take time, energy, and resources. On page 2 of the plan is a list of folks who made up the steering committee. These folks and the groups they represent are the stakeholders in this plan.
What you should try to show me, are you trying to see if it's gonna work? Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't tell what you were. My apologies.
That's okay. Shall I continue? Okay. I hope some of these folks will come forward to serve on this committee. I hope the Select Board can establish such a committee in the next month so that we can begin meeting in January. I am willing to serve on this committee, and I am pleased to work with Susan Ayers in contacting the folks to serve on this watershed management plan. Thank you for your attention in this matter. So if you look on page 2, Ellie, in that book, you'll see all the people are involved in the advisory group. And so I intend to get all of their addresses, their email addresses, reach out to them, tell them once you've approved this, that here's an opportunity to serve on this, and we will all benefit from being able to work together, and it won't be a burden to any one particular group. The Lake Association can't handle it. Camp Lincoln can't handle it. You people can't handle it. We need a collective group that's their only plan, that's their only task. So I'm hoping that you will consider this an important piece. We'll be working with Catherine Sink in the state level. She is responsible for the 319 grants. And we already have the plan for Greenwood Lake, the beach area, sorry. Yeah. We already have the plan for the improvements to Greenwood Beach. That's already in place. So we just need to apply for a grant. We've got all the information, just need to transport it into a grant through DES, and perhaps that will happen. It could happen this coming spring, if all worked out, and I think we'd be off to a great start, because that's the #1 site that is impacting Kingston Lake, believe it or not. Of everything that's out there, the deterioration at the Great Pond Park, Greenwood Beach is a problem for the lake. And that has a cyanobacteria bloom almost every single year. So I think that would be an enormous improvement, not only to that lake, to that pond, but also to Kingston Lake.
Can I ask a question? Vera, how many people do you think would be beneficial on a committee? I haven't seen the list, so I don't know how many people.
Well, I would like to see a Kingston Lake person, somebody from Greenwood Pond, somebody from Danville. I think what's his, the planner you have, what's his, Glenn Greenwood. I'd like a select board person. So there's 3, 4, 5, 6, or Camp Lincoln, 6 or 7 people. I should have made a copy of that page 2, and then you could have seen all the names.
We'll get that distributed to the board. It's not a problem.
Okay,
Also, I would be remiss if I did not thank you and the members of the Kingston Lake Association for the yeoman's job you have done, not only this year, but throughout the years, in promoting clean, safe lake water throughout Kingston, the boats, the monitoring, the volunteers, hundreds of thousands of hours that you all and your organization has put together for us. I can't thank you enough.
thank you, thank you. Time job.
Well, and it's,
And a commitment, a lifetime commitment.
It's a lifetime commitment, right?
and I mean, I know, Muriel, just from knowing the work that you do on this, that, yeah, it's a lifetime commitment, but it's a labor of love on your part. I mean, you put a lot of
Yes.
time into it and you care about it. And
Yes,
I think the request is a valid one. You know, the report is a great report, and unfortunately, like most reports, if there isn't some way to follow up and implement, it sits on the shelf and it's all for naught.
that's right.
So I would certainly support it. I just want to make sure, though, that if, so that you understand, Muriel, that if the select board chooses to follow your recommendation and establish the committee, that as a committee of the select board, it would be subject to 91A. I mean, agendas and notices, proper noticing, minutes and posting of minutes and all of that. So just, it would be an official committee at that point, so.
Okay. I hear you, just saying.
Well, it shouldn't deter you, but I also don't want it to be a surprise.
Yeah, well-
when, if and when this happens, that someone goes to you and says, well, have you posted the meeting? And, oh, where are the minutes within X number of hours? And, you know, so forth and so on.
Does Susan Ayers come along with that?
No, she does not.
Oh, shucks. I'll try to get it right next time.
We'll make sure we keep voting until we get it right the next time.
Okay.
Great. Would you like me to go, I'll go turbo through my slides? All right. What time, how much time do I have? I can go.
You know what? I go 20 minutes.
Perfect. That's perfect. Thank you. You can stop and interrupt me if you have a pressing question, but we did put some nice slides together for you. So here we go. So just the acknowledgements and the report. It takes an Army. Southern District YMCA, I guess they're not here tonight, but they have been a big part of it, and we're doing some projects out at Camp Lincoln to do some plantings along the lake. This is the watershed that I mentioned. This is just an overall concept to show you that it all goes somewhere. And then here's our watershed, and then, as I mentioned just now, everything is slowly flowing. Right now, it's not flowing much at all. In the springtime, it'll flow, and after rain events, it will as well. And so everything that's in the watershed, especially sediments, makes its way down. I'm going to talk a little bit about Kingston Lake because we do work on a lot of other New Hampshire lakes, what some of the differences are. I thought that might be interesting. One really nice difference is 16% conserved land is a high number and very, very important for the health of Kingston Lake. So kudos to those involved. So I won't get too deep into the terminology here, but basically Kingston Lake is kind of, these are the three types of lakes. Oligotrophic, I was just out at Lake Tahoe last week for a lakes conference. That's the deep, clear, really high quality water. And then the eutrophic lake is more of a shallow lake with lots of weeds. So, you know, Kingston Lake falls in here. Over time, lakes tend to go this way. It's over thousands of years, but what's happening with human impact is that it's happening in decades. So what we want to do is try to improve the quality of Kingston Lake, you know, more up back into this area where it used to be. So really quick, phosphorus, it's within us, it's natural, it's a natural element, it's a nutrient, but there's hardly any phosphorus in the lake. We measure phosphorus in Kingston Lake in parts per billion to give you an idea of just how minute it is. So there's not much there. So if you add a little bit and it's within our soil here in southern New Hampshire, if that soil makes it into the lake, then this is an experiment done in the 1970s in Canada. Phosphorus was added here in low doses and not here. And that's when we start to have this algae or this cyanobacteria. So, 500 years ago, Kingston Lake looked like this, and we love our lakes. Sometimes we love them a little too much, and you're gonna have 10 times more phosphorus when you remove these trees and have runoff happening. So it's soil erosion, but it's also these trees and all this understory canopy uptakes the nutrients and protects the lake. So cyanobacteria is toxic. We've had we've had at least 3 instances where we've had these cyanobacteria blooms. It's a threat to human health. As our waters warm up in New Hampshire, they've become more and more of a problem, and a lot of closed swimming days across the state, and a lot of health concerns, dangerous to pets. So, a little bit of this is okay, but it's when it's in concentrated high amounts that it becomes a health issue. I mentioned soil erosion. These are not from your watershed, but these are the types of things we look for because, again, all this runoff contains phosphorus. It'll flow into the stream, and it will eventually make it into your lake and cause problems. So here's the watershed planning cycle. I mentioned we were here 2 or 3 years ago, and we're all the way through the process to, okay, as Glenn mentioned, now it's time for the plan not to sit on the shelf and to do something about it. In some ways, we kind of did the easy stuff. And now, the boots on the ground, harder stuff comes in. And yes, of course, it costs more money. I'll go into that in a little bit. A little bit about your lake. It's, 50 to 55 feet deep in the deeper holes. So here's Camp Lincoln here, just to orient yourself, the dam down here. The darker blues, we call this bathymetry. It's a map of the bottom of the lake. So the deeper it is, the darker the colors are. So you can see how shallow it is. And this just helps us get an understanding of the lake. And the reason that Muriel and the state sample these deep holes is because you don't just look at the surface of the lake, you look at the whole water column, the whole depth of the lake, and you obviously want to be consistent on where you sample. So when we go out there, you have your depth finder and you say, okay, we're here at the deep hole, let's get our sample. So we spent a lot of time looking at the water quality and what the impact is of the land to the lake. So in really simple terms, that's a lot of what this report was doing. We did do some boots on the ground work, these are pictures from the watershed of looking at some of these sites. I like to call it death by 1,000 paper cuts, if you've heard that term before. So a lot of times people are like, it's the smoking gun, it's this or it's that, but generally it's not. Generally it's hundreds and hundreds of sites or dozens of sites, and it's the cumulative impact of those sites. So we found 55. I heard Muriel talking about the Greenwood Town Beach, so the designs are already drawn up for that. That was kind of a bonus part of the project. We also took boats and we went around the lake. I was there for that. That was interesting and a lot of fun. And in these pictures, these are, a shorefront property. Obviously, your view's obstructed, but it's a higher rating, if you will, than these properties here, where there's a lot of runoff and not a lot of trees and vegetation that help the lake. Overall, I'll say that when we did the shoreline survey, the average score was a little bit under 7, so it's actually pretty good compared to other lakes we've worked on in New Hampshire. But that said, there's still, it was okay. Like I said, it was slightly better than okay. So there's plenty of room for improvement. And we have spent some time talking to the Lake Association and landowners, and that work really needs to continue. We also gathered data on septic systems, and I'll show you a little bit more why we did that, but we do this for every lake. And, this is obviously 25 years. Obviously, you can have systems that last 40 or 50 years, but we start to see problems generally after 25 years. So maintenance is really, really important. One of the things we did, and I could literally spend a half hour on this, I'm not going to, we did a build-out analysis. And the reason we did this is we didn't want to look at just the snapshot of your town of Kingston, and also I should mention Danville now, but also into the future. In other words, how much more is this watershed, here's the whole area that's going to drain in, how much more is it going to develop with human impacts? And this map is in the report. There's a lot going on here, but it shows a lot of the features. Here's the green, is that 15% of the conservation land I mentioned. You have the dark greens, you have a lot of wetlands here. Obviously that's unbuildable land. A lot of the buildable land is more in this area, and then obviously in some of these areas as well. So again, we look at all the areas where, there's restrictions to building, and again, we found that all in all, your town is doing a really good job. There is some more work to do in Danville, I would say, to follow suit with Kingston. And then this is almost the reverse of this map. So that shows, this is unbuildable. So you see, that's why there are no houses. The black are the existing buildings in the watershed. So 1,200, almost 1,300. The red are projected buildings based on your current zoning in Danville and Kingston. You could have another 400 or so buildings, or about another 25% more growth in the watershed. Because of the aquifer protection overlay, I think that really, we've worked on lakes where there's, another 1,200 buildings, that it could double in size. Generally speaking, with your population growth, these red houses, if everything stays the same, and it won't, right? Because the economy changes, there's a lot of factors, but you can guess that this watershed will be developed probably within 50 years or so from now. That sounds like a long time, but now's the time to address that and be aware of that. Okay, so again, models are not perfect, but we spend a lot of time and money doing this work, and we have to, right? This plan has to be able to quantify everything. So when we do this lake model, we're looking at all the different types of ways that phosphorus get into the lake. So from Long Pond, which you can see I mentioned here, from the atmosphere, there's some phosphorus. P is for phosphorus. The watershed runoff and base flow from septic systems, right? That's coming below ground. And then sometimes these sediments in the bottom of the lake can also release phosphorus when oxygen conditions are low. I know I'm throwing a lot at you here, but it's all in the report, and I just wanted to show you the numbers. So you have the phosphorus in the lake, and then so 32% of the phosphorus in the watershed is coming from Long Pond and down through that system. About 41% is from the direct watershed, and I'll show you another map in a second. I can't read that. It looks like it's about 8% from the atmosphere. Septic systems are 9%. The internal loading from the bottom sediments is 8%. And 2%, that's the pesky geese that there's a really high phosphorus in goose poop. So we've already been struggling a bit here. So again, a lot of numbers, a lot of science, but it's important to know that this is why we did this exercise. because we need to understand where the phosphorus and the problems are coming from. So if you look at this on a map, the different colors, the green has lower phosphorus from these areas. The orangey brown color is the highest amount of phosphorus running off. And then the yellow, I mean, remember, that's kind of the developed area we looked at on the map with more potential to develop. That's kind of in the middle. So this is just a visual way to show where the runoff is coming from. So all this happens and all this work goes into it, and then at the end, we have to figure out how much phosphorus we need to reduce from the watershed now, which is 16% to Kingston Lake and 25% to Long Pond and Danville. In order to get to these phosphorus levels, ppb stands for parts per billion, we want to bring these down. Once they start to get up towards 15, that's when you have really serious problems, and that's a general number. It's different for every lake, but just that's something we want to bring them down instead of let them go up, which is what they've been doing over time. You also want to look at offsetting, future development. We know the watershed is going to develop, right? That's a natural occurrence. More people are going to move to Kingston. There's a lot of really good things about that. We just need to be careful that as that development is happening, that the runoff is reduced going off of those properties, so we're keeping that phosphorus down. Okay, so this is kind of an important one that I put in here today. So that's total phosphorus reduction, kilograms per year. So 40 kilograms of phosphorus, you can kind of, have in your mind that that's only, a few sandbags of phosphorus, but it doesn't take much, and that's how much per year we need to reduce here in the watershed. We did also a lot of work looking at these different categories. Some are kind of easier to quantify, like these are all the construction projects you need to do to stabilize the soil. Others, like land conservation or agriculture, which there's not much of here, is a little more difficult to quantify. But what I really want to show you here is that, somewhere in this range, it's about, there goes my pointer, about $1 million over 10 years to get to that level. So that's about $100,000 a year in the far right column to do what's necessary to protect Kingston Lake. I would say that's a bit lower than average, that not a lot lower, but than we've seen in other lakes. Lake Winnipesaukee, that number is astronomical. So obviously $1 million is a lot of money, but it's very attainable, especially because there are grants out there that you're now eligible to help alleviate some of those costs. So I'm going to go quickly through this and then leave time for questions and discussion. But we have given some recommendations to the Lake Association and the state on how to do more monitoring, right? So that you have a really good idea of how much the lakes are changing. They are changing over time as our temperatures in the air and the water get warmer, as the ice out is much later, much earlier in the year. It changes the ecosystem of the lake. A BMP is a fancy acronym for a best management practice, and that's basically getting work done on the ground that stabilizes the soil, and also, it can look nice too, and shorefront property owners will need to do their part to do some of this work, and they're already starting. We talked about Greenwood Pond Beach, that's already out there. These are recommendations. Septic systems, inspect them every 3 to 5 years. I tend to say 3 years around a lake shore, right? A lot of stuff is happening below the ground where we can't see it, and an inspector is one of the few types of people that is qualified to go in there and look at that. And obviously, regular pump outs every 1 to 3 years are recommended. You've got a great road commissioner here. The first time I ever came here, I looked at all the nice ditches and how stable they were, and that made me happy because I see so many bad ones. But these are examples of the types of projects. That's obviously more of a suburban road here, but you can see the types of things. I didn't mention road salt, but chloride levels have been coming up in Kingston Lake, and I know that came up in the June meeting as well, and I know some of that's the state, so that's something we need to be aware of. New Hampshire is on the cutting edge as far as working to do something about it, but the chloride, the chloride is toxic to the little bugs that live in the stream that the fish feed on, and then you can see you can have a breakdown in the food chain when that happens. So low salt areas are important. Land conservation, doing more of the same. You guys are already on a good track for that. There's more recommendations. You can't do enough education and outreach, and the Lake Association does a good job, but a lot of this, again, if it's death by 1,000 cuts, people need to understand the problem, so hopefully this presentation outlines it a bit. So the landowners have the most power to make a difference, and we're really trying to get that message across. The Lake Association, I already mentioned, is doing that. And then finally, let's talk about next steps. The lakefront landowners can do all this work. For the town and the committee that Muriel has talked about, there's millions of dollars available in the state of New Hampshire per year to do lake protection. So now you're eligible. What I think is a really neat part of this is that you can use that money to fix sites on public and private lands, right? And in my experience, having done this work for a while, that's kind of rare. A lot of times it's just public lands, but literally you could get one of these grants, and a Kingston Lake landowner could do $1,000 worth of work, and the grant could pay for $600 of that work to improve that property. That's a big deal to me. It's a grant, so there are some strings attached. You have to take pictures of it and show that you're doing the right thing. But we've seen, dozens, if not hundreds, of watersheds improve with this sort of what I call grassroots, boots on the ground work. And then, my last part was going to be Muriel, but she already spoke. So there's our contact info, and happy to answer any questions or hear any comments that you have. I know that was fast, but I stayed in time.
You did, and I appreciate that.
Ellie, Dave Talon is here too from Camp, he's the Camp Lincoln director, just so.
Did you want to add anything, Dave?
First of all, I apologize. I hadn't been for 6:30, so.
Okay, you need to come forward and sit by a microphone. Muriel's got one in front of her.
Well, good evening, everybody. Forrest, thank you very much for all of that, and Meryl, thank you very much for speaking on behalf of the KLA. I just want to share the original grant that we got through the town of Kingston that Camp Lincoln helped facilitate with the KLA and FB Environmental. We're very dedicated to continuing to work with the town of Kingston and all invested parties to make sure that the action plans laid out there are something that we can actualize and operationalize over the coming years, because we believe it's incredibly important for not just the people living on the lake, but the town of Kingston, and making sure that we are acting as a role model for environmental education for our youth, and also modeling what we hope to be done for the lake to protect it for many generations in the future.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board?
I just want to read something from Evie Nathan, who's the chair of the Conservation Commission. She can't be at the meeting tonight, but she wanted to say that conservation supports the plan going forward. Greenwood is definitely the priority, and we applaud the work that the KLA has done.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Glenn?
No, I mean, I appreciate the presentation. Having served on the advisory committee, I'm familiar with the work. I participated in a fairly extensive site visit that was done at Greenwood Pond in advance of Horsley Witten coming up with some of that design work. So I'm familiar with all of this, I'm comfortable with all of this. I do support the request for forming a committee with the understanding, of course, that, you know, all those caveats that I mentioned, that if we do that, it comes, again, like grants, it comes with strings. But I think it's important. Otherwise, unless someone is going to carry it on, the report is going to just get buried and nothing's going to happen. So,
Especially when we look at a 10-year project of $1 million. You have to have stewards to process that through. I have one small question. You included a lot of Danville. Is it because their water flows into our water that they have to be, are they part of this project with us?
Yeah, they have been part of the project.
So you want two different boards of select boards to work together on a watershed proposal?
Well, Kingston's always been the lead because the lake is within Kingston, but Danville was part of the committee, their road commissioner was involved, and, you know, I think they're here to help.
I'm not opposed, but I haven't seen any in the 50 years plus here that we've seen a lot of cooperation.
right. Well, and to that point, I mean, during the process of coming up with the plan, there was a lot of discussion at different meetings about the fact that if you saw one of the slides, I think there a greater percentage of flow into the lake comes from the Danville part of the watershed.
That's what it looked like, yeah.
And I believe that they didn't participate a lot in the development of the plan.
Right.
So it could be a challenge to get them to participate, but it's important that we continue to try to get them involved, because it is what happens on their side of the town line directly affects the lake.
They have benefited greatly. If they take advantage of this, they have benefited greatly from this report with no cost to them. Right. So hopefully, I'm going to be reaching out to those people, and I'll do my best to bring somebody on board.
And that's part of your suggestion, is that there be at least a member, maybe two, if you could get them from Danville.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, my quick piece is that, you know, if you look at the map, you know, it's all about protecting Long Pond for Danville. So they have a lot to gain, and clean water coming out of Long Pond will obviously benefit Kingston Lake. So I mentioned that because we work in watersheds where there isn't a pond, and, you know, streams don't necessarily get the same amount of love as lakes do, and it's a little harder to get other towns involved. But in this case, anything they do from Long Pond will benefit Kingston Lake, so it's a win-win.
Okay. There's another, it's an extra challenge that
Yes.
I know our fire chiefs try to organize a area fire division. Did not work at all. There a lot of resistance because they didn't want to share. I understand that to a certain extent, but water comes from everywhere. It's not just one location. And so that's a concern. But we're up to it.
We'll see. We're up for the challenge.
We're up for the challenge, yeah. Thank you very much. This
Thank you,
was
guys.
most
Thank you.
informative.
Appreciate it.
Are you going to leave us a drive? I mean, can we put this on our website and promote it in any way, or?
Yeah, I can see if
Adam, yeah.
Adam, I can see if he can copy that, because it's on the drive.
That'd be great, because
All right.
the more people that see it, the more they'll question, the more involvement we may have.
We should make a presentation to the Danville.
Let's do it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
So I'll ask you, Ellie, is this something that you want the board to think about, or are you prepared to accept a motion?
What would you like? I don't mind voting on it because I think it's the right way to go, but we're gonna need some time to contact individuals that might be interested.
Oh, well, of course, but before all that contact and establishment can be done, I mean, we need to set the framework, and that's authorizing the committee to happen.
Right, it may not happen January 1, but I definitely wanted to see us do it. Because with holidays, you're gonna have,
Oh.
it's not gonna necessarily happen overnight.
All we'd be doing here is authorizing the establishment of it, not setting any dates, not,
I'm with you on that one, 100%,
okay.
100%. My colleagues.
I was gonna make a motion, but Chief Pellerin had his hand up, so I.
Oh, it does. Come on down, Chief. We're gonna get you a name tag and put you over here.
So Graham Pellerin, not chief right now, 9A Woodland Drive in Kingston. So just keep in mind, and obviously the KLA has worked their tail off and, to get to here, but Kingston has at least 6 public bodies of water. So I know while the focus may be right now on Kingston Lake, you have residents that live on Powwow Pond, Greenwood Pond, Bayberry Pond. So you may want to take that into consideration when you start talking about spending money. So I don't know if it's worth putting a member from Powwow Pond on this committee to at least get, more input than just focusing on Kingston Lake. Just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Yep. Great comment.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
I mean, we could wait and
Because
use,
Kingston Lake runs into Power River.
yeah, they all flow together. Eventually, at some point, they do connect, there's no question. We have the aquifers we worry about and all kinds of stuff.
Can we make the motion, Glenn, as far as authorizing maybe an investigative committee to let us, we gotta find out what input we have, and in other words, we're kind of authorizing it, but I don't think January 1st is gonna happen.
Well, I'm not suggesting even establishing a date. All I'm saying is that we've been asked to authorize the formation of a committee, and I'm prepared to make a motion to do that. And then it would be up to, Muriel was the one who stepped up, and she'd be working toward finding members for the committee, and of course, they'd need to come to the select board to get appointed. It's a committee of ours, so we'd have to do the appointment. But Muriel could be doing the legwork to locate members of the committee and bring them to us. And then it's up to them to set meetings and go after grants and so forth and so on.
I agree.
Okay.
So I think part of that, though, is to, I don't know if it would be Muriel or us setting how many members, right? Because the bigger it gets, the less you get done. So, saying a committee of 7, and then it's up to Muriel and to include 1 select board member. I don't know, but I think.
Let's take baby steps. Let's endorse a proposal first.
Correct.
And make a commitment as a community to get behind putting together a watershed plan. That's step 1.
I think that number's an unknown right now.
It is an unknown.
It is an unknown, yeah.
Because they may meet quarterly, they may break down into different groups and specialty areas. It's too many unknowns, but I think we should endorse going in that direction.
Correct.
I do believe that.
So let me try this. I'm not sure what you want to call this, but I just wrote down quickly, Kingston Lake Watershed Management Plan Committee? I don't know if there's a simpler way to say that, or different words to use.
I like to put the word action in there, action committee.
I like the way you think.
How about Kingston Lake Watershed Management Plan Implementation Committee?
Ooh, even better. Even better. It's proactive.
All right, I'm going to make a motion that we as the select board authorize formation of the Kingston Lake Watershed Management Plan Implementation Committee as a formal committee of the select board.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for all your work, really. I mean that sincerely. It's a yeoman's task, and there's still miles to go. This is just the beginning. Thank you. Okay, item next. You're welcome to stay, you're welcome to go, but we're going to talk about the community, New Hampshire, the community power presentation. And Rick, are you going to be presenting? And come on down.
Hi.
Please introduce yourselves.
Yes, I'm Rick Russman, and I chair the Energy Committee in town.
Bring that closer so we can hear you.
You need a bigger voice?
Yep.
Okay,
I
sorry
need you-
about that.
Use your outside.
Your daytime voice.
Anyway, as you know, I was on the Budget Committee for a lot of years, and one of the things that I always talked about was the energy costs that we spent, gasoline, oil, propane, whatever, because the operating costs are one of the few things that we could maybe control. Wages are always going to go up, and I've always talked about that on the Budget Committee. Several years ago, we decided to go with the LEDs and the street lights, and I was one of the people that pushed that, and it went from like 30,000 a year to 20,000 a year when we did that. We did all the LEDs in the town buildings. It's the right thing to do, it's smart to do, it's gonna save the town money and ultimately the taxpayers' money. We've done the insulation here in the building, we're upgrading some of the heating systems, et cetera. Again, saving the people money. This is an opportunity to directly save the people money because of lower costs for the electricity that they're paying for. And Henry, who represents the Clean Power Coalition of New Hampshire, will give you a presentation, but ultimately, when we talked about this back in, they came and did a presentation to us, and I think there were like, 60 towns at the time, and how many are there now?
About that, between 60 and 70.
Yeah, between 60 and 70, yeah, back then it was 57 communities, 2 counties, and now 4 counties that have actually joined this program. So it's the second largest utility now in the state, and it's just, even in Exeter alone, they've saved something like almost $3 million for the people in Exeter since they put this in place. So anyway, Henry, Hernandez, I'll let you take it over from there and see what you want to say.
Thanks, Rick.
Yeah. And clearly state your name, thank you.
My name is Henry Herndon. I'm the Director of Member Services with Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. We are a nonprofit organization that was established in the state in 2021, created by New Hampshire cities, towns, and counties in response to this new opportunity that was put in place by the legislature to let cities and towns sort of have more local control over some of their electricity procurements. And I'm really here on behalf of that nonprofit coalition to extend an invitation to the town of Kingston to join the coalition and explore your options as far as they relate to implementing a Kingston Community Power program. So I'll talk through what is community power and what might that process look like for the town. I'm not sure who is controlling the man behind the curtain. And maybe I'll just say next slide.
The wizard.
So just at a basic level, like 101, so these are programs that were made possible by the legislature. Governor Sununu signed into law RSA 53E, some updates to that law over the past few years. And this allows a city, town, or county in the state to become a default electricity provider for their residents and businesses. Sort of 3 pieces to this. On the one side, there's the pooled purchasing power for electricity supply. So the town can bundle together the electric accounts to achieve an economy of scale of the residents and businesses within that town to go out into the power market and purchase electricity. You can also combine with other cities and towns to achieve even greater scale in purchasing power. Unitil, the utility company, is always going to own the grid. They're going to deliver power to the customer. They're responsible for reliability. They send the customer the bill. The only thing that would change under this program is the line item associated with that power supply would become Kingston Community Power. That would be in the control of the town. So the benefits for customers being lower electric rates and other energy choices or more energy options available to the community. A couple key pieces of the legislation. These are entirely voluntary programs, so no customer is required to participate. They can always choose to go back to their utility or buy power from somebody else. But Kingston Community Power would become the default, and that means that if you go through the whole process and you decide you want to implement the program, customers who have Unitil as their energy supplier would be noticed and then automatically enrolled 30 days later into this program. They could opt out before that time or after that time, but they would be automatically enrolled if they take no action. Another key detail, there are no tax monies associated with funding the cost of these programs. They're entirely funded on customer electric bills. Next slide. So this is the status of the market statewide and the membership of our nonprofit coalition. So there's, it's a little bit dated, but there's more than 60 cities and towns that are members, and now 4 counties that are members. And those communities collectively represent over 35% of the New Hampshire state population. We serve about 170,000, 180,000 electric customers, and collectively, customers have saved over $14 million since programs launched starting in spring of last year. And so that just lists some of the communities and shows you some of the spread. And just in our neighborhood, Exeter was one of the first communities to launch, and they're a fully Unitil served town, so that's a good point of comparison. I think I have some information on an upcoming slide on that. And then more recently, Kensington and Hampton Falls just brought programs online this October. Next slide. And these are just the members. So each member, you know, really has its own program and sort of its own branding and logo. We're not sort of a monolith where we provide the exact type of service to each town, but we really support individualization or customization within the different member communities. Not every town has the same objectives, whereas one town might have a renewable energy objective, another town might just say the bottom line is dollars and cents, and that's our priority, and we can serve both of those needs. Next slide. This is our staff team, and I'll just note our CEO, Brian Kalman. He's got a long history working in public power. He was the vice president of power supply at New Hampshire Electric Co-op, which is another nonprofit utility in the state. So we've got some great expertise there, and just a good staff team that's available to support member cities and towns. Next slide. Okay, so rates. These are the current supply rate offerings in the table on the right. And really, I'll draw your attention down to this blue row that says Granite Basic, 8.6 cents. So during this rate period, which is August through January, that's the coalition's base rate offering compared to Unitil, which is at 10.5 cents a kilowatt hour. And this is perhaps a fair or typical rate saving relative to Unitil. In addition to that sort of basic rate comparison, customers could choose from this menu of energy options. Maybe a customer has a preference for more renewable power, they could opt up to one of those other options listed above in the table. I will note that Unitil supply rates typically change every 6 months. They run August through January and then February through July, so it's 6-month cycles. And community power rates typically adjust on that same schedule in an effort to maintain a discount for customers as utility rate goes up and down. And I did include, so the community of Exeter, again, they launched in April of last year, about a year and a half ago, and collectively those customers have saved about $2.7 million relative to the Unitil rates they would have paid. We also have customer service, so there's a website, communitypowernh.gov, and a phone number where you can call up customer service 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and say, hey, I want to choose the cleaner power option, or I have a question about my program, or I'd like to opt out, I'd rather be with Unitil, and that's all very accessible through the website or through the phone number. Next slide. This is just the rate performance over time, the red line being CPC&H, or Community Power Coalition rates, and then the 3 blue lines being the investor-owned utilities, and the one that starts the highest, that's the Unitil rate. For whatever reason, they've been a little higher than the other utilities. But you can just see over the past several rate periods, consistent savings relative to the Unitil rates. I'm gonna note something here. There is a change at the state level to the way utilities buy power that is perhaps going to be piloted this coming the first 6 months of next year, really starting in February. So that's something we're monitoring very closely. That is something that I think people at the State House have different opinions on, but essentially the regulators have said, We used to have the utility just lock in 6 months of power and price the risk into that. So the risk is on whoever's selling the power. Now we're going to have Unitil float 30% of that purchase in a real-time or a day-ahead market, in a spot market for power. What that means is they're shifting the risk from the supplier, the seller, on to the customers, which could result in short-term savings.
You're not surprised, are you?
And it could result in volatility. So I'm just noting that we've seen sort of stability in how utility default supply works. There may be tinkering with that or experimenting with that with unclear results or uncertain results. So just something to monitor over the next 6 months or so. With that tangent, I'll continue. Next slide.
Next
Can
slide.
we see the next slide?
Next.
There we go. Great, so just process-wise, so if the town of Kingston were interested, there's a process that is partially laid out in the state law. Really tonight, I'm here to talk about the first step, which is an invitation to join CPC&H, which a select board may do at any time by a vote to adopt our joint powers agreement. That's just sort of the bylaws of the nonprofit that says we're made up of municipal members elect our board, they're shielded from our liabilities, and those sorts of details. So if the town would be interested in joining, you could do that at any time by select board, vote on the joint powers agreement. That makes you a member of the nonprofit without any hard commitment to launch a program or to go the distance of creating Kingston Community Power, but it does give you access to our resources and our network across the state. So that would be step one. If you want to join the coalition, the next step would be to have a committee develop a plan. This is required by state law. So you establish a committee, they develop a plan along the lines of what's required in state law, and we essentially provide comprehensive service to support that. 60 plus towns have done it already. There's a very well-trodden path and a template, and we can make that very streamlined and easy for your town and your committee to develop that plan and sort of customize it to fit your needs. And we'd have 2 public hearings on that. That plan has to go to the voters at town meeting. So you need the town meeting blessing on the plan to say, okay, select board, we're interested in doing Kingston Community Power. So that's step 2. The third step then is back to the select board where you can enter into the service agreements to actually implement the program. And then we would purchase power, we would send a letter to every customer, we would do public outreach and education and implement the program, enroll the customers. Next slide. Prior to enrollment, every customer would receive a letter in the mail at least 30 days in advance. It'd say, welcome to Kingston Community Power. Here's our rate. Here's how it compares to Unitil's rate. If you don't want to participate, call up this phone number, go to this website, and here's the answers to all of your questions. Some of those questions are things like, some customers might already buy power from somebody other than Unitil, a third party or a competitive supplier. Those customers are not affected because they've already made a choice in the market. So they wouldn't be affected by this program. They'd stick with whoever their selected power supplier would be, and some other details of that nature. Next slide. This is just a summary of that joint powers agreement. I did share that document with Susan Ayer, and just some key points. Really, the purpose of this agreement is to create the nonprofit as an agent of the member cities and towns. So each town doesn't have to sort of staff up on its own. They can all share that staff in the shared nonprofit. And the joint powers agreement shields our CPC&H liabilities from being recourse to our member towns. It also includes other details of the bylaws. And again, there's no real commitment until after you go through the town meeting and you would entertain the final agreements if you wanted to implement a program. And with that, I believe that concludes. And
there's a couple of things that I just want to add here that originally, some of us on the committee were thinking that, and Henry said they've had 60 towns, a lot of them have lawyered it up and had the lawyers look at it and so on, so there's not a lot of reason to have to spend money on that. But they have templates essentially for what we would actually need to do. And originally, we were thinking, trying to do this, have the board vote on it, and try to have 2 public hearings and put it on the March meeting, but I'm almost beginning to think that to spread it out, because I know some of the people here, Pam and Dana had expressed some reservations, and I'll ask a couple of questions that Henry can maybe answer, of doing it in 2026, I'm thinking, rather than try to rush it through. And I think that would probably go a long way towards, even though the people wouldn't get a chance to save money until then, but basically the joint powers agreement, they have essentially a standard type of thing that it is what it is. But questions were raised like, for example, money can be used that's generated to hire lobbyists. Well, Unitil has lobbyists right now, so it's really very similar to what the utility does right now. It's just essentially another utility. Part of the way they can save money is obviously they don't have to pay shareholders dividends quarterly, and they don't have a CEO that's making over $4 million a year that they have to pay. So there are some cost-cutting things and frankly, the committee that runs it is made up of the member towns. And so Kingston would have somebody from Kingston be the designated person on there, and then the actual committee that runs the whole program is actually so the towns that are in it are the ones that run it. So it's kind of nice as far as keeping it local and keeping it in where it is. I don't believe that anybody that's actually joined as a town has actually decided to get out of it, have they?
No.
No?
Well, not post-launch,
Right.
not after having launched.
Right, once the town has decided to get it, they've all stayed. So, I mean, it's a great opportunity for Kingston, I think, and for and obviously, if Kingston's buying the power right now through the Rockingham Planning Commission, which they've done over a contract over years, they can still do that. The school has got it through Constellation, and if they find they have a better rate there, they don't have to join, they can opt out. So they wouldn't even be a part of it. People that have solar on their roof, net metering doesn't qualify, so they would not be part of it. So it's just the regular ratepayer is the one that would benefit, whether it's a business or a homeowner. And it's just a great opportunity to actually give the taxpayers a chance to save some money on their own. So,
Not if the government's messing with this.
Pardon?
Not if the government is messing with this. They're shifting the liability. I really don't trust the government to do it right, to be honest with you. So I'm a little concerned about that.
Well, it's actually the government right now is what's running it, because the PUC is the one from the government. Now, Chris Sununu, as the governor, signed this into law because he believed it was a good thing for the state of New Hampshire. Cliff Below, who was the vice mayor of Lebanon, I think he is, he served in the state senate with me, and we were both interested in energy issues even back then. And really bright guy, and he's the one that actually wrote the legislation, put this thing together and got it going. But it really brings it down more to local control than it does state control or any federal control. So it's certainly something that we really should seriously consider. And one question that I'd like Henry to answer. One of the things that some of the people here were interested in is, what happens if they go out and buy some kind of infrastructure? They spend money, they incur debt. How does that affect the towns that are members? I mean, let's suppose Kingston joins, and then, I don't know, let's suppose the Community Power Group goes out and buys infrastructure, and builds infrastructure. Are we on the hook? I mean, what happens in that case for the town? What safeguard would we have?
Sure.
Can you talk about that?
Sure, I think that's a good question. And I'm gonna answer it, but in a little bit of a roundabout way, because there's this example in Kingston that's actually really interesting, where Unitil has gotten approval to build a local solar array. Are we familiar with this?
Oh, yeah.
They sort of have made the case to the Public Utility Commission that it's actually cheaper if we have a local generator here that produces power in the community, supplies it locally, as opposed to having to ship it in out of state, pay for the wholesale cost, pay for the transmission infrastructure, things like that. This is an example of a program that a community power program, if it wanted to, could pursue over time. Similar types of things where maybe it's cost effective, or maybe it makes sense for other reasons for a town to voluntarily say, we'd like to buy power from a local project. So our organization is designed, and this is laid out in the Joint Powers Agreement and other agreements, to be able to facilitate for towns that want to. So if a town wanted to, hey, we've got some good land, we want to build a power generator, we want to buy that power, we could facilitate the contracting for that. The costs of that project would be associated with the customers in the town that chose to participate. So let's say, for example, Exeter wanted to do its project, but Kingston didn't want to buy into that project. Those would be separate. So the costs associated with a project for one town could not be shifted onto a town that hadn't signed up for it. So that's perhaps part of the answer. Yeah, does that?
Yeah,
is that sort of?
we just, obviously, I've been in town for a long time and concerned about the town and care about it like all of the people here do. We are concerned that, sure, we want lower costs for the residents of the town, and at the same time, we don't want the town on the hook for something that comes along down the way.
Right. So there is again, this joint powers agreement doesn't have a set term. If you go through have a committee, have hearings, go through town meeting, and then you want to actually, you've gone through that learning process and you want to sign service agreements. There is a term in that agreement of 36 months with off-ramps for early termination. So that's an upper limit of the term of your agreement. But really what would happen in practice is, we take on a liability to serve community, we purchase some electricity on their behalf to then provide to them over, maybe it's a 6-month block of time or what have you. In the event of termination, let's say Kingston had launched, you're 6 or 12 or 2 years into the program or 3 years into the program, you say, we're going to terminate for whatever reason. We would then look at, okay, how much power do we have to liquidate or reallocate? We either have to sell that obligation or just move it to another community and ensure there's not unfair cost shifting there. So we would there'd be sort of this orderly unwinding of that, and we would terminate the program and return the customers back to Unitil.
When we first started looking at solar energy through a committee, we realized that the 2 school buildings in our town, and we're a joint community school district, used 80% of our electricity. Do they have to participate in order for the town of Kingston to participate?
They do
or
not.
the town of Newton?
They do not.
But they can, if they can with the meters that are in Kingston. They can't for them, because it's Kingston's power program, so it's not, Newton would have to do their own, and then the meters in Newton would, but like Newton Memorial would have to go to Newton, and Bakey and the high school could be here if the school board decides that, we can get a better deal with Clean Power Coalition in Hampshire than we can from Constellation.
They already have an alternative source other than Unitil? The school district?
They may.
I don't remember, I used to be
a lot of times school districts or larger energy users do. So one way to think about this is the customer choice always wins. So if the customer has their preferred provider, they can do that. If they want to choose to leave that and come into Kingston Community Power, they can do that too, so long as they're inside the town.
So the same with the town could too, if you determine that the Rockingham Planning Commission contract is not as good, you can get out, you can terminate that one and go with the community power one.
Yeah, 'cause on one of your slides, you had the community power rate at 8.6, and the Unitil was 10.506 for this period, the 6-month period. That's like a 20% saving. Is that what you're telling us, that we would save 20% on our electric bill?
That is what customers are currently saving in Exeter, for example, and some of the other towns around here during this period, and it's 20% is about what it has been for Unitil historically. I can't guarantee a rate in the future.
For anybody else, but for Unitil, that's the comparison.
Except, keep in mind, we're talking about the kilowatts. We're not talking about delivery charges. In other words, Unitil still owns the wires, the poles, they deliver the electricity, they maintain them, they send out the crews. It's just like, that's what they do. What you're buying from, with the Kingston Power Company, basically, is the kilowatts.
Right,
So
so that,
it's not 20% of your
of
whole
the total bill, it's of that portion of the
of the
kilowatt
power
hours,
bill.
correct.
of what
So
you're-
that's 2 cents you're talking about? Yes. So if the average home uses 900 kilowatts a month, you're gonna save $18.
That's right.
Yeah, and the
Times
example
12
on the
months.
slide, it looked like it was about $20 a month, roughly, the difference between Unitil and community power.
For a 650 kilowatt hour a month
Right.
household, yeah.
And if it's a commercial business and they use a lot more, then it's more. But, and you say, well, okay, that's peanuts. Well, is it? I don't think that anybody here would, I mean, they'd be happy to save $20, $30 a month, I think, if they could.
No,
So-
but the other side of it is delivery of power. I mean, Unitil, I've had businesses in other areas, I didn't always have Unitil. They have been the best, most reliable in delivering power and getting back online when power goes.
And they still will.
And
They will still be doing it.
they would still deliver power.
Because it'd be their equipment that's delivering to our homes.
Everything, the trucks.
And it's
beat
their
all
trucks that would fix lines and poles.
Okay,
All community power does is deliver the kilowatts.
gotcha.
They sell you the kilowatts, and the electric company still, the bill will still come from Unitil. So you'll get the same Unitil bill that you get every month.
It's just that the electricity charge, if we were part of this, would show up on that bill on a line saying that that's where the power came from, but it's still the Unitil bill with all of the other stuff that's typically on there. Just as a point of reference, I mean, this is an electricity aggregation program, basically, which is authorized by state legislation. And this nonprofit, Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire, has made an effort to go out and get communities on board, and they've done that. The Rockingham Planning Commission that Rick referred to, also on behalf of its member communities, created an electricity aggregation program that Kingston has taken advantage of for the last several years. And each year, we as a community on our municipal bill save some number of thousands of dollars a year by participating in that. There is no cost to us other than signing up for it. The bill still comes from the same place that it always did. It's just that on the bill, it indicates that the power is coming from whatever the name of it is. I mean, we as a community, at least on the municipal level, are already taking advantage of electricity aggregation and have been doing so for probably half a dozen years now or so. And it's saved the town a chunk of money.
And the school's done the same.
And the school has done that. The school has a deal with a different aggregator.
Yeah, okay.
And again, saving money as a result.
And you would, I assume the town and the school would look at the rates and say, okay, this rate's better than that one, and they'll go with whichever one is low, and they should. And so,
Well, yeah.
but the average person doesn't have that opportunity.
That's correct.
So we're giving them the opportunity really to save a few dollars each month. And so to me, it's a great program, so.
Other comments from the board?
Just to further that, though, the residents have the choice not to do that. They can stay like they are right now, right?
Any month.
Any month they
Any
can
month they don't like
opt
it.
back out of the program. So on one of the slides, you mentioned that there are some customers who already get their power from a source other than Unitil, a third party. Would they have the opportunity? Because it was misleading. It made it sound like they wouldn't even get a letter and they couldn't opt into this. Are they eligible even though they get their power from a third party right now?
Yeah, great point. I'll just clarify. They would get a letter. In that letter, it would just say, if you are with a third party, you won't be switched in, but you're welcome to enroll if you'd like. So they can opt in if they want to drop their other program and jump in.
And one other thing that Dan Doyle raised, in interest of full transparency, he didn't like the idea of having to opt out. He thought you should have to opt in. Well, the problem is economies of scale. You need to have a you need to have a huge base to make it work, because they're buying a certain amount of power. So the idea is everybody's in, but you can opt out as soon as you get that first letter. You can either opt out then, or any month going forward, you can just say, I'm out, I don't like this, I want to go back to Unitil, or I've got a better deal from, I don't know, some other association.
What percentage participation would you need to stay in?
There's no requirement there. We typically see maybe about 3, 4, definitely less than 5% opting
Opt
out.
out, okay.
Yes, and then again, a couple of percent opt up to clean power, 2 to 4%.
And there's no requirement for the municipal buildings. So I think the thing that I get wrapped around is you say Kingston as a whole, like it either has to be all of Kingston or none of Kingston, but that's not true.
No, not exactly, but maybe the way to think about this is it is the new default. So if a customer makes no choice, if they're just, minding their own business, they're never shopping for electricity, their old default is Unitil.
Sure.
And this is going to replace that as the default. And
Right.
if they make no choice, now their default will be Kingston Community Power, but it's just one more option because they can now go back to Unitil or any of the other market options.
Okay.
However, if a resident has already opted in to another electricity aggregation program, they would then have to opt out of that one and opt into the Kingston plan.
Right. Customer choice wins. Whatever the customer has chosen is where the customer will be.
Right.
And if they make no choice and they're with the default, this is the new default.
So let me ask you this, Henry, in terms of Kingston, what could or should the board, as far as going forward, what steps should be taken, or what needs to be done to move the ball down the field?
Well, I think you have sort of 3 options. One would be don't do anything. One would be aim for a 2025 town meeting, and one would be maybe aim for a 2026 town meeting. So I think that second option, typically communities start sooner than mid-November in having a committee and getting a plan and having a couple of public hearings. It might, it could be done if there's strong motivation to move quickly. You could potentially go to 2025. It might be more typical to say, hey, let's think about this. Let's see, maybe they're changing something with how utilities buy power in the next couple months. Let's see what happens there. But let's take the first steps. You could join our coalition now. You could join us whenever you'd like. But if you wanted to look at the 2026 town meeting, that's another option. And then you have time for a committee to sort of think about this, see how the market plays out, and develop that plan.
Well, it strikes me that 2026 might be the best way to go. That would give us more than 14 months to really kind of make sure this is what we'd like to do.
I think it's too soon for March 25, because there's so many other things going on in town. I just don't see us being able to pull a group together to gather sufficient evidence, information, number one, and inform the general public. I'm sure there's some individuals here in the audience that would like to comment or ask questions, and I'd like to give them that opportunity to do so. Because this is a big step, and you may be used to it, but we're not. No. And I don't want to just go in blindly and say, yeah, we should do this, but I'd like to get some input from the public as well, if this is the direction we should go in. I'm not objecting to it. It has a lot of merit. I got a few more questions, but I can wait, because if we're not doing it right away, then I'll have time to ask them anyways. But
Does this cover all power companies that service Kingston, or just Unitil?
It would well, that's actually up to you, but does Eversource have some accounts here?
No.
yeah, there's a few.
New Hampshire Electric Co-op.
New Hampshire Electrical.
So that's up to you and how you develop the plan. Some towns say, the co-op is a little different because they're a nonprofit utility already and they kind of have their own local governance and this and that. So some towns have said, well, we think there's more value in the community power. We're going to enroll the co-op customers. Some towns have said, the co-op customers, they have pretty competitive rates. They're a nonprofit. We're not going to enroll the co-op customers.
And we don't have that many. It's almost 96-7% Unitil. It's really heavily Unitil.
It looked to me from one of the charts that you had, Henry, that the co-op's rates were pretty close to what your rates are.
Yeah, so it's here in the green line. So
there it is.
For the first couple months, for like 2 months, the co-op had lower rates than us in the red. and then we have had lower rates than them since that point in time, but they're essentially the same. Right now, ours are 8.6 cents, and theirs are like 8.64 cents or something.
And just an example, just food for thought, like I say, Unitil is more than $4 million a CEO. The New Hampshire Electric Co-ops, it's less than $1 million. So it depends if you're a nonprofit or if you have shareholders, and money talks. So anyway.
I like the idea of waiting and putting this to the voters in 2026. We have time to do it now if we really wanted to. I'm not sure that it's worth forcing the issue. And to Ellie, your comment about folks wanting to comment, they would have the opportunity because there are 2 public hearings required before it goes to the vote, which we would have to hold. And so.
Yeah, by law, you have to have 2. It has to have 2 public hearings.
That's fine, but I don't know, I personally would not wait till a public hearing to get input from some of the citizens.
No.
That's where I was going with that. The public hearings, I expect to have to do that. That's not a problem. No issues, but before we even commit, I'd like to see some input from the community. Make sure that they want us to go in this direction, that's all. More of that than anything else.
Just one comment.
Sure.
I'm going to throw out a 4th option, which may be out there in left field, but I'll do it anyway. The town of Stratham nearby had a special town meeting in the fall to approve its plan, specifically for that reason. And there's an advantage to that in that if you get approval in October, you can launch at the opportune time in like March of the next year. It's a good time in terms of the market because you just got through the high-cost winter months. So just saying, if probably not appetite for a special town meeting, but if there was appetite for a special town meeting, we consider that as well.
Interesting.
And you know, when you think about towns, Epping is certainly a pretty conservative town, so is Stratham in that respect. I mean, Kensington, I mean, so it's not like, you've got a real cross-section of communities and counties so far that have decided this is a great deal. So anyway.
Yeah, I don't think the politics are involved, but the ability to get good power at reasonable rates and good service is the key.
Saving money doesn't go with any particular party, so it's usually something that most folks can get behind.
Okay.
I was going to say something and I lost it. One of the other reasons that it might be worth moving a little more slowly and working toward 2026 is, Henry, you brought up the possibility of changes in how things happen at the utilities. It might be interesting to see how that all plays out too.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
And just if we have it's posted, but we have a energy committee meeting this Thursday night. So people that are out here listening want to come by.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Talk to us. We'd love to have them come by.
Yeah. And we didn't have our public comment number 1 yet, so I would certainly open up the audience. I really want to get some input from some of the members that are here, the people that took the time out to come in here and see what you're all about.
Should I vacate the microphone?
Sure. But, I'm so glad you came. I think this was an interesting presentation, and it may be just what Kingston wants to do, and let's find out.
Very good.
Very good.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. I know you've been talking about this for a while, so.
We might want to have Henry and Rick slide over to the side because I'm guessing that some of the questions that come from the audience might need an answer from these folks.
I think that's a great idea. And we'll just come over here to the left. And maybe there's no one that wants to make any public comment, but I'd entertain if anyone would like to come forward to speak on this issue. Yes, sir, come on down. Have a seat and state your name and address, please.
Hi, Kevin Mary Carrero.
Kevin.
Mary Carrero. I would like to say to you all that I would err very carefully on the side of caution. We all have car insurance, right? You can all go on an app and decide what car insurance we want. Save some money, maybe. We all have cell phones. Nothing against what you gentlemen are doing. The huge problem with the government telling me where I need to get my power, my cell phone, my insurance. I pay for Unitel. I could get 3 or 4 other providers that are much cheaper. But I have Verizon. Why? Verizon owns all the infrastructure. Unitel owns all the infrastructure. I choose to stay with those people. I don't think I need to be told that I need to now opt out of something that I potentially didn't want any part of. So again, you guys do with it what you want, but I would err on the side of caution of getting into the mix of telling the people where they need to go get their power. And if you don't like it, you can opt out. I've read some of the contract stuff. Get into that another point or on the side if you want. Not a big fan of where the money's going, where it's coming from, how it's being used, how they allocate it or decide to allocate money to what, their projects that they're doing, where they're getting their, how do you guys get paid? Where's the money come from?
So on the electric bill, there's a charge for energy supply, and right now that goes Unitil. After this program, we would be providing that service. So that rate, 8.6 cents, the vast majority of that pays for our power costs. We're managing a portfolio of power contracts in the power market, so that's most of it. There is a part of that pays for our operating expense or our overhead, staff time, the offices, contractors, customer service. And then there is a portion of that rate that goes into a reserve account. So we have, that's sort of the net revenue. If we were for profit, that would be our profit margin. We're a nonprofit, so we do accrue a reserve account to ensure we can have long-term stability in the rates. As the market changes and this and that, we have a healthy, just an operating reserve. So we're paid when the customer pays their electric bill, pays for power, pays for operating costs, pays for the reserve. So then overages on that, if there were to be any, special projects that you might be involved in or wanting to do, how are those funded? If those would be funded, that would be a town would sign up for that, and they'd say, we want to participate in this project, and that town would say, we're going to commit to, let's say, a 10-year power purchase agreement to buy the power from it, to get the financing for that project. That would be sort of isolated to the towns that chose to participate, and none of those costs would go to towns that did not choose to participate. We could also, a town could also use revenue bonds to develop a project if it wanted to, but that's not required in any way, that's just an option. So then the volume of people who potentially have opted out of the program, how does that affect them? So any customer can at any time opt out. So the customer is never going to be liable for a long-term liability. So there's no contractual obligations? There is a contractual obligation between our organization and the project developer. We say we're going to agree to buy that power for a certain amount of time. So we have to be a bankable entity, right? We're working towards getting a credit rating. That's why we have the reserve account. So we want to be somebody that the developer is going to say, we know you're solid. You're going to be around for 15 years. We're going to do a 15-year contract with you because you have 200,000 customers. Stable customer base, stable revenue stream. So it's easier to them to then target the town in a whole instead of trying to pull in individual people to get to switch over to you. Well, a town is not liable for any infrastructure or project unless that town signs on to a contract for that. So there is no long-term liability for that for the town. My confusion then is, what is the purpose of all of this if you're trying to sign up customers to go with your particular municipality for electricity? Why are we going after the town to blanket the community when you're looking for customers? Why not just target the customer direct? Well, I guess maybe I would refer to the purpose statement of the state RSA, so it's RSA 53E, and the purpose or the intent there is to afford local communities local options and ability to innovate on their energy programs, to sort of have more local control and then participate in the market. So the town, and by virtue of the authority that the town meeting would give them, is sort of the vehicle to authorize that.
It's almost like a condensed marketing way to enter our homes through the municipal government of the community.
Yeah, the important thing is, anytime you want out, you can get out, and if you wanted to come back in, you could come back in. So it's not like, the door works both ways on this, so it's not like once you're in and you're stuck. That's not gonna happen.
Right, but I'm still perplexed about why the town has to blanket, why the town government has to blanket the town under this umbrella, and then tell you that if you don't want it, you can opt out. Well, I'm not a big paper guy, and my daughter's here, she'll attest to the fact that she sorts out the mail every day, and all of my stuff's digital. I look at the important stuff, the rest of it I don't. If you guys send me a letter, I can guarantee you, I'll know because I have enough people in the pipeline around here that are gonna tell me things, but I'm not gonna see that letter. A lot of people aren't gonna see that letter. A lot of people are gonna one day open their electric bill and go, what the heck is this? You know? So again, government is getting into the position of picking what I wanna do for me. Again, I can opt out, but you're deciding that I gotta go down this road.
The only thing I would say,
Again, at some point, it starts here,
right,
and then it goes to my cell phone, and then it goes to my insurance, and where does it end?
we're hoping to try to bring it more local than,
That would be
instead of
great.
the federal or
Send
the
me a
state,
letter.
we're trying to do it right here in Kingston, not so it's more local than
Bringing
up the scale.
We're getting a little off track, and we have another hearing to go, but thank you very much for your comments. Thank you for speaking to us. Does anyone else like to say anything on this issue at this time? There will be another opportunity. Okay, I saw Pam first, Pam Brown, and then the gentleman in front of her. Okay. Okay, you're next.
Pam Brown, 23 Sunshine Drive, Kingston. This discussion reminds me a lot of the arguments for having government contract to supply pharmaceuticals and medical services and drugs, because the government, such as Medicare, has such buyer power they can negotiate down the prices. And they did that in Canada. And the prices were so low, the first cost to be cut by the pharmaceutical suppliers was R&D, research and development. Meanwhile, the United States prices stayed high, but that's because we include the cost of R&D in developing new drugs. So yes, we're cutting out those dividends, some of which are not distributed. They're taken in to improve capital and R&D. But what might we lose? I don't always see a benefit to necessarily cutting prices, because there is a cost there. I did have a few concerns about the project. The big one was the opting in, opting out issue. I did get a letter from someone who has CPC in her town, and she said, I chose not to go with the coalition. I went to my provider, and they immediately cut my rate, gave me a $75 Visa gift card. And she did not agree with the language of the coalition or the fact that you have to opt out and they automatically enroll you. I also noticed that the bill for CPC will be inside the Unitil bill. So that's kind of sneaky, because you don't even know you're on the plan. You're getting the Unitil bill as usual. Other concerns I have come from reading through the bylaws and the joint powers of agreement. The agreement states climate policies represent a central focus of the organization. That's on pages 3, 16, 17, and 21. They state the purpose, section 2, is to support and promote energy and climate policies for the common good. That's repeated in the documents. On page 15, the board approved, the CPC board approved projects include EV charging infrastructure and solar green investments are highlighted. Traditional energy projects do not seem to be part of their plan or their project list. On pages 22 and 23, the CPC Board of Directors is elected by a plurality of members, and it has the power to commit members to major projects. I understand the projects are individualized to the towns. The towns can opt into participating in the projects. But I noticed also that if we do have the CPC board incur debts, which they have the power to do, even withdrawn members remain responsible for these debt obligations. And the types of debt obligations include not just project contracts, which are individual to the towns, but cost-sharing agreements, which include general and administrative costs. So those are not projects. Those are not individual discrete projects. Those are part of the general projects, the general investments that will be going on with the organization. We were led to believe that energy committee meetings, that the utility rates paid monthly would include everything, but it's clear that if we did withdraw from the plan, the utility rates do not cover everything we paid for. We would be continuing to be liable for these obligations, it looks to me. Pages 8, 18, and 24 said that the member funds will be used for lobbyists. Our Regulatory and Legislative Affairs Committee will engage in germane legislative activity. I'd like to know what kinds of policy activity you'll be pursuing. And also, they regularly indicate that they do not have taxpayer funds used. However, green EV energy infrastructure such as electric charging stations are heavily subsidized by federal dollars, so there is your tax burden right there. Also, fire departments have been complaining that they have a heck of a time putting out EV battery fires, and that would raise town costs and property taxes. Also, I know Dana Ackers asked a good question at a recent meeting. He said, let's say Kingston residential customers largely opted out of the plan, but the town buildings remained customers. So if the town continued as a member, just the town buildings remained a member, wouldn't the town be obligated to pay for any CPC debt or liabilities we carry? And if so, that means that would be in part of our property taxes, because we'd be covering any remaining debt, even if we withdrew from services. So the CPC rates also may not remain low, because we're about to see a massive increase in traditional energy supplies taking place nationally, and it is a new organization. I think we should wait before jumping in and committing to it. I agree, we should wait at least a year, and I really don't want us signing anything until we have more information. I do know that Derry and Exeter have gone full-blown into joining, and it's been indicated that they have smart meters coming in, and there's a concern, okay, so when you have in your purpose that you're going to pursue climate policies, that constrains the board to vote according to their bylaws. They can't just say, oh, let's go for like a nuclear plant or whatever, something that's not a green policy or a climate policy. So again, I think you're constraining what the investments will look like. So those are just my general comments after reading all the documentation.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir, come on down. Kate. Yeah, I know.
I'm Dana Akers. I live at 16 Rhinefus Lane in Kingston. One of the questions I had last time you brought up was, can this cost the town money? And I'm still not sure I'm hearing the answer. It sounds like if the town backs out of the contract, for any reason they decide to, that it can. And I would just urge you as the select board to really investigate that. It sounds like a very complicated contract. Make sure you truly understand, what you're signing the town onto, and are there serious financial obligations that could be incurred? And I don't know the answer to that. And then with the spot rates, my understanding from you a couple of meetings ago is that's one of your main advantages, is you're buying in the spot rate market, as you and I discussed. It doesn't come without risk. It's like it's like when you buy your own propane. Some years, if you lock in versus buy on the spot rate, some years it works out, some it doesn't. There's risk either way, but it sounds like the way they're changing the utilities might be more in the direction that you guys are, more to the spot rate, and it sounds like that might take away some of your advantage, and the rates may be, the differences may not be as much. I'm not sure. Time will tell. And then the one thing that's a bit confusing, and you say that people have the choice to go back to Unitil, but the reality is it's not going to be the same Unitil. And it's because you've taken, as you say, 95% of their residential customers. The ones you're leaving them with are people that have solar panels. They're forced to buy their power at retail rates. So Unitil's average cost of power is going to go up, and the Public Utilities Commission is obligated to give them a reasonable profit, so their rates are going to go up. It's simple math, it's only a matter of, how much. So it's going to be interesting in the future. I think it's going to be easier for you to beat them because you're making their costs go up, and it's kind of a low hurdle anyway. If I'm not mistaken, I think we have the most expensive power in the contiguous 48 states to start with, so it's an easy competitor. But
Could I just respond to a couple of those?
Absolutely, sure.
So on the liabilities, I would agree with you, and just to respond to some of the previous comments as well. So you will want to understand in the cost sharing agreement, which comes after your town meeting, exactly what the term and termination language is and what you may or may not be liable for. And I spoke a little bit about this, but maybe I'll just elaborate some. So,
Make it big, because we have another hearing and we've been behind all night.
well,
So,
again, so maybe the short version is there is a 36-month rolling term with options for early termination. And essentially what we will do is if we receive a notice to terminate, there are continuing obligations because we've bought power on your behalf, and we will then initiate a process to liquidate or reallocate that obligation in some fashion and do that as expediently as possible to dissolve the program. So that's the liabilities question. And then yes, with the way the regulators are potentially changing how utilities buy power, that may affect our advantage, and we are looking at that. So that's another reason to wait to the 2026. I wouldn't disagree with that. And yeah, maybe that's, I'll leave it there.
And I'll just close with this. We want what's good for the people in town and for Kingston. No one's trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes or is trying to bait and switch or anything like that. We're really trying to do the best we can for the town of Kingston, as I think the select board is too. So I think it will be looked at even more closely.
oh yeah, we'd have to look at contracts before we even go to town meeting, because we'd have to feel comfortable that what we're asking the voters to support was something that was really good in general for the majority. But it's still up to the voters whether we actually do it or not.
It is, but I like your attitude, and you want to ask questions beforehand, because once you put it to the town voters, the town voters are going to think you recommended it.
That's correct.
Whether you are or not.
That's correct.
Yeah,
and if we're not, we need to be very clear about that.
And the town voters aren't going to get in and understand these kind of details.
No, that's what they hire us to do that.
Exactly.
And then we hire the lawyers, and there you go.
Right. But the savings to the individuals, I think, it's pretty small. I mean, Mr. Bakey mentioned 900 kilowatt hours. I use that much sometimes, and Unitil tells me I'm way above average. I think the average is probably a lot less than that. So the savings that the individuals are using, I'm going to guess it's going to average like $10 a month, and it's like, and so it's important, but don't risk a lot of town money to save us, $10
a month.
That's the idea. But thank you all for your time.
Thank you. I'll take one more comment from that young lady right over here.
I push this, right?
Yep.
It's
If
already
it's
green.
green, you're
I knew
good.
that. I'm Laurie Morey. I live at 56 Little River Road. I concur with Pam and with the select board, so I appreciate not rushing into something that has such complex agreements, because I also looked at them, but not in the detail that Pam did. And the joint agreement and the cost agreement, the climate change language, the EV language, just they're so contextually so much more in it. So thank you for delaying and not rushing. And I won't keep you any longer. Thank you, Henry. And
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. It's very informative, very informative. To be continued, for sure. We have, there's the fourth, we have a public hearing on the earnings of the 2020 Town of Kingston Infrastructure Fund. And Paula, I think you wanted to address that, correct? Well, I'm opening, we're going to recess the select board meeting, and I'll take a motion. Do I need a motion for the public hearing, Susan? Yes, I move that we hold a public hearing on the infrastructure fund, Kingston, Town of Kingston Infrastructure Fund for the purpose of meeting the non-federal cost share of the cash match. Do I have a second, first?
Second,
Okay, who's the first?
you were.
Okay, well, that's good. That makes, I don't usually do that, but we make it easy on Susan for that matter. Okay, so the public hearing is officially open, and I'm going to ask Tom and Paula, our finance and DPW director, to address it.
So this was originally brought up, I think a few weeks ago, I can't remember, about the bridge grant and how a FEMA, we applied for a FEMA grant.
Correct.
It was approved for $964,260, and the government will give us 90% of that, so $867,834. So we need to come up as a town, come up with $96,426. When this all came up, I didn't have all this background, so I didn't know the whole situation.
Okay.
What I found out today after talking with Tom and Lisa at the DPW, and then Lisa gave me a gentleman's name at CMA, which is the engineers that helped create this whole grant. I called him to get a better understanding because in December of 2022, we received funds from the state for the bridge block grant of and I'm not going to have the exact number, 111,000. And then in 2023 or 24, we received another 30. In that whole time period since 2022, the end of 2022, we've spent about 90 some odd $1,000, and then you just signed a purchase order for an updated to the CMA contract for another 90,000. So we would be spending a total of like 180 altogether. What I found out today is all included. All the monies we've spent is included in that 10% in these numbers. So we don't have to come up with any additional funding over and above what we've already spent.
We get block grants every year.
The bridge grant is a little different. The highway block grant is what we get every year. The bridge was a different, the bridge grant was a little different, but it's for the same project.
So you're saying that what we've spent already counts as our match?
Yes.
So we don't have to raise any more?
I just found that out today when I talked to the gentleman at CMA, because I needed a better understanding of the whole situation.
Well, that's very good
great
news.
So we don't have to take the $96,426 out of the infrastructure.
Eventually, we'll get reimbursed for all of these back payments that we
Merry
made.
Christmas to us and to our taxpayers. Absolutely. Thank you, Paula and Tom.
Yes.
Do you
There's
have
more?
anything?
No.
Oh.
Is this the other shoe dropping?
We suggested that, because she was presenting it, that she called Josh at CMA. My understanding was there's 81,000 left in that bridge block grant, and phase 2 of this was the archaeological dig, the additional, and my understanding was it was that number, plus we might have to come up with 9,000 more. That's what I understood. I hadn't talked to Josh. So basically, numbers, there was a lot of confusion on my part. I think we have it straightened out.
Okay.
And it's to the benefit of
the town.
Because I was starting to get a little frazzled there.
So we don't need to take action tonight to take any money from the infrastructure fund?
No.
However, at some point in the future, you're saying, we might be requested to do some?
Nope.
Okay.
Because
Well, that's not what I heard Tom say.
Well, that was my understanding before. She had talked, I
oh,
haven't touched base with her.
They haven't.
I thought we were
It
gonna
happened
be,
very late today.
Got it.
I thought we were gonna be 9,000 short that we'd have to find from
And we're not.
infrastructure fund.
Okay,
Right, thank you, both of you.
yes,
So, that's that.
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Well, that makes
Does
for,
anyone from the public wish to comment on this public hearing that doesn't have to take place after all? Yeah, but hold, yeah, give us a minute, okay? Yep. So anyone from the audience? Anyone?
hopefully someone will come up and thank the staff for figuring this out and,
Yeah, exactly, okay.
okay.
If there's no further comment, then I'll close the public hearing and reconvene our regular board meeting. How's that sound? Okay, I love it when we move along. Tom, we do want an update on the front stairs project. You didn't get off quite that easy, but I know I've been being a pain in the neck to Susan, saying, when do we get going? We had to sign the contract real quick, and then we didn't have anything done.
Okay,
So what's the status?
I had a phone call late last week. Ryan Olet will be the project manager. So I spoke with him. He's coming Thursday, this Thursday, for a site visit to talk about some details. They are still in the process of signing some subcontractors, the concrete, blah, blah, blah. 2 or 3 week job. Yeah, and he's thinking the potential for start date, I'll nail it down, hopefully Thursday, is the second week of December. They're going to start. Yes, so.
Which means that it should be done by the end of the calendar year.
Yes.
So weather permitting and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well.
But I'm gonna get a feel for him for, I don't think I stressed this needs to get done. Well, it's to their benefit anyhow, for a timely job, not, they have blankets for if the weather gets, the only issue I was thinking about, and I haven't talked to him, it's roughly a 2-day demolition. That's gonna be the noisiest part. I'm hoping that maybe on a Friday and Saturday, if I have to talk to them to see.
Okay, the least disruptive that we can do.
Yes, and that's obviously.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
A no-brainer. There was verbiage in the contract to that effect.
Okay.
But I also want to, not delay it.
Right, it'd be nice to get it done.
So, and he felt that it wasn't going to be that disturbing.
Okay.
That it would shut down Paula may have to move.
Yeah, she may need to be downstairs, right? No, you're right, not having her up here.
But,
well,
so that's where we're at. Thursday, I'll know more.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. We have the amended assessment, we got that already. Front stairs, we know business, state land lease renewal. We're going right on to new business. On, yeah.
Right.
New business. We have the state has agreed to lease the land across from the boat launch to us.
Just one question,
Sure,
sorry.
sure.
And I might have missed this, did we do the police grant funds vote on the corrected amount? We did that?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
It's not one of the ones I had circled as undone. The stairs was one, and the sexton was the other. It's non-public anyways. Okay. Comments, questions about the lease? I mean, have you had a chance to look at it? So they want to do a 25-year lease. I think that's kind of long, number one.
I think it's a draft still anyway on their end, isn't it?
No,
Still being
it's,
reviewed.
they took our existing contract.
Yeah.
And because we had made a small minor modification to add that we had a collection center there, so they already added that language in there. But the only concern or question that we may have is that if we continue the collection center, we need to do some capital improvement to that property. That building that's been there forever is falling down. So if we do, we have to get approval, it clearly states it in the lease, if we do anything there, we have to get prior approval, because, right, we don't own it. But if we do capital improvement and they choose to sell it to us, would that then offset the cost of if we purchased it from them, right? So that would be the only thing that's, I would have a question.
Well, we get a few people need to take a look at that before we really make a decision. But I didn't see a dollar amount in it.
It's $1 a year.
$1 a year, that was the dollar amount.
Yeah.
I didn't see a clause in there that for any existing hazardous waste that might be buried in there, I don't want the town of Kingston to be responsible for it.
Well, it's a lease, so we wouldn't be.
Well, the state owns.
Well, there's a clause in there that says we're responsible for anything that happens in there.
If we introduce something to it.
If we cause it.
If we cause it.
Right.
But we don't plan on causing any hazardous, we don't collect anything hazardous there. We wouldn't, we're not a hazardous waste site, so we wouldn't take anything there. It would just continue operations as is. So if Public Works, I mean, they store their equipment there. So we're taking cardboard and glass, so, I mean.
Well, if we continue the collection center.
Yeah, but we don't plan on taking anything hazardous. We would expand operations to take other few things, but we wouldn't take hazardous material.
We're not looking for trouble, and neither am I. All I'm saying is, I want to be sure that the town is held harmless, so Paula's got to review the contract, we're going to have to have an attorney look at that.
I think she already has.
She has, and then the next step is to send it to our attorney.
Right, I mean, there's a lot of steps, I mean, we hadn't talked about it ourselves, and any potential pitfalls.
Right.
So, Paula, have you reviewed it, and is it ready to go to our attorney?
I reviewed it. My only question is, can we pay the whole fee up front?
Like 25 bucks?
Yeah.
Well,
like,
yeah.
I mean, it's kind of crazy to
It's gonna cost more to write a check for a buck than, yeah.
But yeah, I agree that the lawyers our attorney should definitely take a very close look at it, because there were some things regarding, like, what if we were to buy it and let's say they sold it in 20 years? I don't know. Are we, if something's found that there was contamination, are we responsible for that? How do we know we wouldn't be?
Okay, next step, I'm glad you've had a chance to look at it. Next step, we just send it to the attorneys before we take action. Okay. Ms. Dion?
And
So can I just say this, it expires December 31st, our current lease, so.
You need to make a decision before then.
But the attorneys need to get back to us long before,
Yes,
within
I'll send it
a short period of
Yes.
time. Short lease on this one.
I don't believe, but I'm not 100% sure, that if we were to fix, let's say, the building that's there, that it would, if we were to buy it, that it would get taken off price or anything like that. It's just.
Well, we don't have to buy it, we just extend the lease.
Right, yeah, right.
Okay. Stacy, did you want to add something on this one here?
I just want to remind everyone that to lease a property for more than 1 year has to go to the voters.
So this current, I get that, but this current lease expires December 31st, and town meeting's not till March.
So could you extend it for a lease? Because when we went to the vote last year, you were only given permission to do the lease for the dump. So
Correct.
You don't have the authority to sign a lease for more than a year at this time.
Okay, point taken, thank you. Yeah. All right, Mr. Faulkner, did you have a comment on this issue?
I did.
Come on down. Don't fall.
Just to clarify, if I'm not mistaken, the board can enter a multi-year contract so long as there's an escape clause without going to the voters.
That is correct.
That's all.
Thank you.
So we can get that, so we can
Escape
get
clause.
that in the lease.
That's correct. Thank you,
Okay.
Adam.
Right.
Good
So-
point.
Right, Susan, if you can, yeah, request that.
But it's still, it makes more sense, 25-year lease is still a long
sure,
time, and it
sure.
should go to the voters no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else before we go, the hazard mitigation plan update. Okay, and that's Graham Pellerin.
Graham was going to
Chief
present that.
Pellerin. The last item before we go into is the hazard mitigation plan.
Good evening again, for the third time. This hopefully will be my last time up here.
Told you we're gonna
I'm
give you a
leaving it.
seat.
So the hazardous mitigation plan, I sent the board an email with the official finalized draft. We get a grant for this every 5 years. We go through this long process of, it used to be in person, now it's phone calls. So we had the planning board, we had Lori, our select board member Swed, Phil Combs, the DPW director at the time, Pam Brown came to a couple meetings, myself, police chief. And really what it is like I explained in the email, it's just to map out your high hazard areas, including buildings, what's gonna happen if we have another Mother's Day flood or another ice storm. Great Pond Road only has one entrance in and out, so if a tree comes down, or like during the floods, it flooded and we had to get high water rescue vehicles in and out of there. So basically it's just all of that and highlighting all those issues. It is a good to have plan. It's obviously sponsored by the state, and the state and FEMA require the plan every 5 years. So the last time we did it was 2019. And so really, I don't know if Susan has the sign-off sheet that it does need to be notarized. So I don't know if you want to bring it down to Tammy's office and just, each one of you needs to sign it.
I don't think it's in here, but we
No,
could.
I sent them everything online. I didn't think of the.
I have it here if you want the
Good.
hard copy, but like I said,
Yeah.
it needs to be notarized, so,
Yep. We can do that.
yeah, and I sign it as well, so.
I'm going to make a motion to adopt the most recent hazard mitigation plan and to authorize the select board and whoever is it just one signature or is it?
No, all, I think it has
everybody.
5.
Everybody? Anyway, authorize the select board to sign off on it, to adopt it and sign off on it.
Discussion? All those in favor, please say it. Oh. Okay, come on down, Pam, come on. Sit.
99.9% of the document. But I was a little concerned.
Use the microphone, right?
It's
But I
there,
was a little
it's there.
concerned about Ms. June Garneau, who helped draft this. She inserted references to climate change in this document 29 times. And for example, on page 34, although not identified as a natural hazard in this plan, no plan can be considered complete without discussing climate change. Climate change increases with the frequency, duration, and intensity of natural hazards such as wildfires. So that is not true. NASA has stated in a recent paper that researchers detect a global drop in fires, and they even have a chart showing that the wildfires are decreasing since 2003 through 2015. There's regular reference to climate change throughout this document. There is a footnote that references the DES, the New Hampshire Environmental Services Office, has a page called Climate and Sustainability. If you want to leave that in, that's fine, but there's a lot of conjectural remarks in here that I just think should be deleted from the document. It also has overarching goals to enhance the protection of the general population, citizens, in the event of a hazard. And then at the bottom, promoting equity is one of the overarching goals. Promoting equity by challenging that we incorporate whole community concepts, encouraging the identification and inclusion of vulnerable populations. I have no idea what equity means. I would strike bullet 6, that's on page 11. So anyway, I would think that we should just kind of strike a lot of those references to climate change. The data is a little bit sketchy, and there's a lot of debate on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pam. I guess I have a problem scratching anything from a committee as a report as a whole. I mean, I think your comments should be part of the record, that you object to those items, but I feel that we have to either endorse it or not.
I object to those items.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Well, that was clear.
I do recall June saying, though, that they had a new requirement that they had to include climate change in part of their, so whether it's controversial or not, I agree with Ellie that, I mean, they're the professionals and we spent a lot of time on that report.
Yeah, I mean, whether you agree with it or not, I don't think the plan states that, you know, climate change is the only reason for wildfires, or climate change, I guess, I read it over, it does reference it quite a bit. I'm not gonna get into belief or non-disbelief of climate change, but the amount of wildfires we've had in the Northeast in the last 2 months may have something to do with the warmer weather. But be that as it may, like I said, I don't think this handcuffs us to believing in climate change or disbelieving in it. I think it just references the potential for that as a hazard.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Okay, any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Thank you all. Okay, we do have a non-public, but I've got things in here to go over, yes. I know, I want to go over this list. Well, we got a few things I want my colleagues to know about before we sign anything on it. And one is a request for a barrel, and another barrel.
Like a trash barrel?
A trash barrel, correct. And I'm assuming that they're looking to pay for one, is that correct? Yes. Yeah. So that's one thing in there. If there's no objection, you will go ahead and sign that. The second item is from Corcoran Consulting Associates, which spells, it's actually an addendum to the assessing contract to cover the people that we put on extra in Tori's absence. Okay?
Which we voted on already.
We already voted on
And this is
that.
just the official contract
Official
extension.
contract, right.
Amendment.
Yep. And I'm the only one that has to do that one. All right, the next item is another additional cart for the $687. We all need to sign that one as well. There's two of them.
Same one, isn't it?
Oh, no, it's the same one. You have it in twice. Okay, we'll take that one right out of there. Okay. Okay, we already did the highway grant, there's nothing on that one. And we have minutes, we have facilities use. We have a request from the Plains Cemetery for the celebration in October. And the chief road agent and both chiefs have signed off on that.
Motion to approve?
In a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. Second application for facilities use is the Board of Tax and Land Appeals on October 29th. Well, all right, they have the date October 29th, but let's see, April 24th, 2025.
Right.
Okay, and what room, yeah, the chiefs.
They're doing it in this room.
Okay.
Right? And it has to do with something on right-of-way land issues on 125 for part of the widening
Right, if
project.
they took a portion of a parcel.
Right.
And they're having a hearing on that, so it involves a Kingston property.
So they're doing it in Kingston.
Yes.
And they're asking to use this room.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to authorize that.
In a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay, now this is the hazard mitigation, right?
And we just voted on that.
Yeah, and there's a couple places to sign on that. Okay, the next item is volunteer service statement agreement and help with recycling, and it's for Alexandra Cavallaro. Did I say that right? Cavallaro? I don't know. 7 Robin Lane, Kingston.
What is that? That was in my folder?
That's in my folder.
Okay.
Volunteer
Oh, the
form?
volunteer forms, okay. There's 2 of those. They're volunteers
Yeah,
that are
one's-
signing on for,
And the other person is Karis Dearborn? Karen Dearborn, okay. Do we need to vote on those, I believe? Yes? No?
No, they're just volunteer forms. We
just need to
them,
sign.
But there's 2 appointments, I think.
and there are also 2 appointments there.
I do. And there's 2 appointment forms here. One's for Harvey Shapiro. Can't wait for that new eye next week, I tell you. And that's for the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee. And the other one is for Phil Coombs for the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee. What's your pleasure?
Motion to approve both of those.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I'm abstaining on Mr. Coombs. That one. Okay, that's it. And now the minutes. Motion for the public and non-public minutes?
Have a change on that?
Sure. Which
You
one?
might want to change select woman Kaufman and select
Oh.
woman Hart to select them.
I will fix that. I usually catch myself, but when I
I don't take
copy
offense,
over.
but, I don't take offense, maybe Glenn does, but I don't.
You know, these days, it's.
Yeah, true.
You should do select board members, Sweat, Appleman, Hart,
Just make it
yada, yada, yada. Okay, so other than the correction.
With those adjustments, I'll move adoption of, or acceptance of
Okay. and-
non-public and public meeting minutes of November 12th.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, okay. The only other thing now is to go into non-public session. You had one more thing.
I thought
Yeah.
we just talked about it before the meeting.
Yeah,
I thought we talked about it before the meeting, but I don't think we officially accepted the purchase of the new cruiser. They're on the top of the back page.
oh,
We talked about that, and then we all signed it already in the packet. There's a PO in the packet.
yeah, we approved the purchase of a new cruiser. for-
Correct.
For next year, but we have to put the order in now.
Correct, and I don't think we actually spoke on that during the public meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, right.
we did not.
So we did not. And it's on our sheet.
So there is a purchase order to put in the order for a 2025 cruiser, because it's gonna cost us less if we order it now. And also that it would retrofit all the existing equipment on the 24 cruiser as opposed to the 25. And it is in his budget for 25,
Correct. So it's a 24-year cruiser, brand new,
brand new,
but it will be purchased in 25 on that budget line
Correct.
item, but he needs to reserve it
correct,
to have the PO signed.
yep. And let the minutes reflect that accordingly. Okay? And I'll accept a motion to go into non-public for,
Do we need to vote on the cruiser or no?
no, because it's on the purchase order.
Okay,
No,
perfect.
it's just letting people know what we're doing,
All right.
if nothing else.
All right, motion to enter non-public session under RSA 91-A:3, Roman 2. This is for legal issue, part-time.
One legal issue and one personnel, a compensation issue.
Okay, so then it's, okay, Susan, you'll have to.
Yeah,
the
I
right
think it's,
sub-letters.
yeah. I'll
Because
put
it's
the
two
letters in.
different things.
Probably A and C.
Compensation is A, and C is reputation. I think it's like I or
What's
something.
legal?
I think it's L or I. Forget what it is. I don't have my folder with the thing on it. I'm
Alright.
sorry. I'll put
I'll
it
do
in.
a roll call vote. Laurie?
Yes.
Glenn? Yes. I say yes, Chuck and Peter, all yeses. Really quickly, I know, I understand, but keep it rolling, baby.